Welcome. It's been a big week in gaming. I'm integot for episode 15 for Sunday the 25th of October 2020. In this week's show, we'll be discussing the original Fire Emblem gets a re-release, Pac-Man jumps into the Battle Royale bandwagon, and Swinny's Swinpressions of the Solitaire Conspiracy. Now I'm joined by the Xbox Hall of Famer himself, the number one Southern Hemisphere RPG Xbox player, number 2 in the world.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
I would say that's the Australian way to do it. If you're the best in Australia or something, and you can stretch that to the Southern Hemisphere, you do it.
I assume Southern Hemisphere. I won't say I know the exact location, the current location of the
We'll
number
roll
one.
with it.
Yeah, we'll roll for it.
Swinny, welcome.
Welcome yourself.
Yeah, and before we kick off, I gotta shout out a correction. So last week I was talking about the PS5 and sort of saying, why isn't there a camera and it can remove the background and, post on Twitch and do all this kind of stuff. And they literally have that for the PS5. Now, in my defense, they haven't really publicized or emphasized that it can be put onto Twitch or to YouTube. And even if you go to their disclosures and their marketing pages, it doesn't say Twitch. It never says that word. But what I did was I went through the HTML code of the site, and it actually does refer to Twitch in the HTML code. So it's either something that is going to be activated or something that's going to be announced later or whatever. But essentially, I got to have a correction because literally everything I wanted them to do, they've done. And having said that, there's no noise about this. No one's excited about this at all. So I think you were right in terms of people are not interested in doing that on the PS5.
Oh, we'll see. There's definitely some people who will take advantage of it. And it's interesting because if Mixer told me anything is that we're already at a point of such what's the term? I can't think of it. Basically oversaturation in streaming. It's insane. Some people obviously just do it for fun, just like we do podcasts for fun. We're not expecting to become celebrities from chatting about games weekly.
No.
And so I understand that, but there's obviously a lot of people who are out there that are really trying hard, and it must be tough. It must be tough to try to get attention as a streamer these days, a new streamer.
Oh, look, I see it in everything. I remember back in the day, I was really into crypto stuff, and this is so far beyond when it was mainstream. This was literally when people are like, what is this Bitcoin thing? What are you talking about? So much so that when it really took off, the amount of people in the investment world that that I work in, or sort of more worked in the past with investments, they would always call me up out of the blue. It's like, hey, you were talking about that Bitcoin 5 years ago. What the hell? Wanting my advice about stuff. I think, with the whole streaming thing,
that just reminds me of that, something Bitcoin, more like shitcoin. Am I right? that comment, that for some reason just was really funny. I just loved it.
So I think always with these type of things, you need to either catch the wave as it's coming up, or once it's established, you need to have something really special to inject into the segment if you want it to be successful. And I think that's the really critical point. For you and I starting this podcast, we don't really have a USP, but we just do it because we enjoy it. I'm not expecting us to be even the number one podcast in Australia for gaming. I don't think that's going to happen because we don't have anything specific that we're offering that is so different to the existing offerings that have already been around for 5 years.
Come on, who else has got an according to you, Xbox Hall of Famer, which is not true.
True. Also, I think we are the longest runtime Australian gaming podcast. So maybe we should advertise that.
By the way, that whole Xbox Hall of Fame thing, it's kind of a shame that I ended up in hospital for that weekend, that I couldn't do the podcast, because you were going to try to convince me at the time
I know.
to sign up, and it the registration finished and everything. And I never got to actually tell you I was already signed up.
Oh, I'm going to kill you. Are you serious?
Yes.
You asshole. I can't believe that. I'm actually pissed.
I couldn't reveal it, damn it. I couldn't. The whole thing was I was going to get you to do another pitch, and I was supposed
Oh
to
my
say,
god, I'm so
that's
annoyed.
good
Actually,
to know. That's good
I'm
to
so
know
annoyed.
because
I even
signed up.
spoke to my wife about that. I'm like, why is he not signing up? I was like, literally, for a fleeting second, trying to jump on the Xbox site, and I'm like, I wonder if I could just sign up for him. And then I'm like, no, I can't do that. Oh man, you're an asshole. I can't believe you did that. It actually did, because I don't know. I swear you weren't going to sign up, because that is kind of like your personality type. You know, if you feel like I can't win it, so what's the point?
Honestly, if it wasn't so easy to sign up, I probably wouldn't have bothered. Because literally, when you're already logged in, you just press the button. That's it, and you're in. You don't do anything else.
Well,
and
I haven't told you this.
And
I reached out to Xbox Australia.
What?
And I'm like, why are there not more categories, like specific categories, like, I don't know, RPG? And then they came back to me, and they're like, oh, all the conditions are on the website and all this other kind of stuff and all the categories. I'm like, canned response bastards.
What are you expecting them to do? To change their whole strategy from you just saying.
If they've got a player who's like so dominant in one category in Australia versus the world, you know, something to celebrate. Bastards.
No, the only reason I also did it was because the random chance thing. You know, it's like, okay, well, if by random chance I happen to land myself an Xbox Series X, I'll take it. But
yeah, that's why I've been eating a lot of Hungry Jacks recently, given that they're giving away PS5s.
Are they doing that in Australia as well?
Oh, yeah. So I don't know if we mentioned it last week.
I say Hungry Jacks, that's the Australian name, but yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if we mentioned it last week, but Burger King in the States are giving away 1,000 PS5s. And Hungry Jacks, which is the Burger King here, and there's a long story about a Perth businessman, blah, blah, blah. And we also had Hungry Jacks and Burger King at the same time in Australia at one point, even though it's the same company. It's really bizarre. They're giving away 50, which is about equivalent from a population kind of perspective.
Yeah, fair call.
Yeah. So there are so many contests to, win PS5s, Xbox Series X. It's crazy. Like, it does make it... There was one where it's like you need to donate to charity or something to have a chance. And I'm like, ooh, maybe I should do that. Tax write-off. But I've lost where we were at. In terms of
we weren't talking about anything. We'll just say, okay. Well, what have you been up to this week? I'll ask you first.
Okay, so I've got a story. So there has been a lot of commentary around Amiibo, and I don't even say I collect Amiibo. I just buy them. I'm not really a collector. I do have 100 and something of them. I don't know really understand the whole.
I'm not a collector.
Thing.
I have 100 and something of them. That is a line. That there's something wrong with that one.
Oh yeah, but I don't know how to say it. Like, I'll let my son play with them. I'm gonna just open them all up. It's more laziness that I haven't opened them all up. I'm not trying to keep them pristine or anything like that necessarily. I don't want to break them, but if they break, it is what it is. So I don't feel like that's a collector mentality, but I guess it is collecting, whatever. Anyway, so
it's collecting without care.
Yeah, exactly. Mindless collecting and mindless consumerism. So there was a really special series of Amiibo that got released in Japan only as part of Monster Hunter Stories 3DS release. So from memory, it was like 3 or 4 Amiibo. And they were really cool ones. They were like ones where, very different from Amiibo. You could actually remove the riders from the monsters. No, they're not from the monsters. I can't remember what they're called. And there's a cat one, Navarro, and it's so expensive, dude. What was that?
A palico?
I think so, but stylized.
It looks like a cat, and actually looks like a cat.
Yeah, it looks like a cat.
Yeah, it'd be palico. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it. I'll shoot you a link so you know what I'm talking about. I think it's a palico. Yeah. It's just very stylized. It's not like what you'd normally see or what you're used to. So this Amiibo is one of the most expensive Amiibos. It's insane. It's like loose, like $300 or something like that, right? And I'll never pay that much for an Amiibo. But I guess when you are in a scene or something like that, because you're surrounded by psychos like you are, everything gets normalized. So, I think if you imported this, it would have been like $40 Australian, something like that, right? Anyway, there was an eBay listing for one, and I'm always monitoring that stuff. And like the person said, oh, hey, it's broken. So it was definitely genuine. It just doesn't scan. And the whole scanning thing, I don't really care about that either. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like this is actually good for me because, you know, it's going to go for a lower price because some people just don't like that kind of stuff. They want it like perfect. So I've got a chance to get it. And I was kind of like, maybe I'll pay like $50 for it, which is insane. Like, you know, don't get me wrong. It's insane. And what I do on eBay, I always wait till like the last 3 seconds to bid. So I was at work.
I'm actually surprised you actually found an option on eBay, considering half of them seem to be buy it now these days.
True. I like the buy it now ones, but in this kind of space, they always do like bids for like very expensive items, normally at least. And when it was like 3 seconds to go, I think I tapped 50 and it would already went higher. And I was like, oh, stuff it. I'm going to just pay $70 for it, right? I typed 70 and went, okay. And you got to understand, it's like 3, 2, like when I'm doing all of this stuff, right? So I go 70 and then it goes 71 needs to be the highest bid. And then I go 71. So I'm like typing in as frantically as possible because it's like 1 second to go. And I'm like, bang, 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 like mashing it and pressing okay. And as soon as I pressed okay, I saw what the number on the screen that I pressed was, which was $771 that I bid for this Amiibo. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Because the thing is, I know that these Amiibo can go for like $300. So I was thinking, oh shit, like it legitimately could go to like $350 or something like that. And I was like, not panicking, but I was just like in a state of shock. I was like, oh my God, what have I just done? I've just bid $770 for an Amiibo.
Here goes my children's university funds.
Exactly. Sorry, Sonny.
For Amiibo of a game I've never played.
And I don't even know what the character is and like if it's a Palico or not. So anyway, the bid got resolved and it was like $105. And that's where
not too bad.
Well, yeah, I know. So this is the trouble, man. This is how it gets you. This is how it's like sick. So I was like sitting there going, okay, this is like the cheapest it's ever sold for in Australia. And even like internationally, they usually sell for like $300 Australian equivalent. So I'm like, $105. This is like a bargain. And then, you know where I landed on the whole thing? I was like, ultimately, I never bid $100 and something for it. My intention was always to bid like max, like $75 max. And even then I would have felt dirty, right? So like once I thought through that, I was like, you know what? I gotta try to cancel this if I can, right? And I do sell a lot of things on eBay and I hate when people cancel because it's so annoying. You have to relist the whole thing. It starts the whole thing again. So I submitted a cancellation and I reached out to the seller and I was like very apologetic and to explain the situation. Like I was like literally trying to mash 71 and I've double pressed the 7. And I think they understood. They were really good about it actually. Like it's not a surprise they have a 100% rating and they've sold like 1,000 things. They just basically said, yeah, cool, cancelled and relisted. And then I've bid for the relisted entry as well.
Oh, what? That's wrong. Like,
how's that wrong?
There's nothing you could say.
How's that wrong? So people saying that's wrong. I don't understand how it's wrong. How is that wrong?
I don't even want to humor you with a response to that. Why is that wrong? Why do I have to explain the fact that you won a bid and said, "Oh man, I made a mistake," cancelled it, and then the person had to relist it?
Yeah,
and, I'm sure that's a quick thing for them, but they have to relist it, and then you rebid on it. Oh, come on, that is a dick move.
I literally do not know why people think like. I'll give it to you, and I want to ask some other friends about this. I'll give it to you. When I have spoken to people about this story, they're all like, "You're a dick," and I'm like, I don't actually understand why. And maybe it's if you're a very capitalist person or like an eBay seller, you just get it. You understand why. It's like, I didn't intend to bid $771 for one single Amiibo. By the way, the most expensive Amiibo is like maybe 400 Australian dollars, like the Box Boy one. Maybe.
Yeah,
right?
But now if it goes for less, not only has that person lost out on that money that you bid for, but if you win at a lower price, then you've gone through the process of cancelling a high bid that you've won and then got it at a cheaper price. Like,
yeah,
and if that person may not actually recognize it's you or not, but like if they do, I wouldn't be surprised if they said if they actually cancelled it.
Why?
I don't know. That's just I'd be pretty pissed as a seller if someone rebid on something they'd cancelled.
I told them that I'm going to bid on it.
Well, at least you're upfront about it.
See, this is the thing, and I know it's a blind spot for me.
So you're saying eBay's a world of dicks then? Everyone's just a dick and they understand
It's not a dick.
everyone's
How's it a
dick
dick?
language.
I made a mistake. I wanted to bid for it. I wanted to bid like 75, but I didn't mean to bid 771.
I wish we could title our episode "How's It a Dick?"
How am I a dick?
How is it a dick?
No, it should be I'm the dick. Am I the dick? It's like that subreddit. Oh, am I the asshole? I'm not sure if we could title it asshole, but yeah, anyway, so that was my story this week. I still don't understand why I'm the bad guy in that story, but I made a mistake. Man, people, people
and you've criticized Mike sometimes for like exploiting like price matching and catalog pricing and stuff.
Okay, let me be clear. I didn't do this with the intention to cancel his thing and then reset it. Like, I don't want that to be confused. I didn't intend to like overbid and then go to the guy, hey, cancel it, and then for it to go to a fresh auction again. That's scummy. Like, if I did that's definitely scummy. That's worse than being a dick, right? That's not what I did. What happened was I was bidding. I was a legitimate bidder in the process, and I put a incorrect bid in, essentially, that I wanted to retract, which, you know, kind of eBay allows you to do.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So I have to say, if I do win it, it will be interesting to see what happens. Because I didn't think of that. They might be pissed off about it. I just like how I'm like so blind to this stuff.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, why don't we get into this week's first headliner? So this week, in a very cool announcement, very like shadow drop again. I feel like a lot of these things could have just been all combined together into a Nintendo Direct. I've forgotten what they're called now because there haven't been many. Nintendo announced a special re-release of the very first Fire Emblem game, and you know, for the West, we missed out on so many releases of Fire Emblem until, what was it, Fire Emblem on GBA, I think it was, which was like the 7th Fire Emblem that was
made. So and I think it was just titled Fire Emblem here, but you know, it was titled,
obviously
had a
not
full title
there,
in Japan.
Yeah. So this was Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, and the special thing here. So this is going to be released on the eShop in Australia for $9. Again, they're doing this thing that they're going to make it limited until March 31. But I think the real cool news here is the very special limited edition pack that they announced. So it was $90 Australian, like $50 US, and didn't come to the UK region, the European region, but for whatever reason.
Sorry, just to correction, the first one we got was the 6th Fire Emblem game, the Binding Blade. Yes,
in Australia or.
Yeah, I'm on the list now. I'm just telling you, it's the 6th one called the Binding Blade. That was the one on GPA.
Oh, okay. Might have to double check that later. God,
I'm literally looking at a list of the games.
That's just not how I recall it. I'm not sure if I'm thinking of it in terms of, you know, because there is debate about what constitutes as an actual game in that series. So, like, you know, even when Sakurai was counting them all, he actually counted the re-releases as originals. So, like, it got up to like Fire Emblem 17 or something.
Just telling you now, I'm literally seeing a list of the timeline of the series, and 2002 was the 6th game.
Okay. I'll check that when you're doing your little spiels. And yeah, going back to the collector's edition, so $50 US. I don't, from memory, believe it's been listed yet. I might be wrong on GameSpot, but I do know with Australia EB Games, it was listed and it's already sold out. And what it had in it was a stylized NES box, like the actual, like the old school boxes that you could buy, and then the slipcase, and it looks like a little plastic replica of an NES cart, a Nintendo Power, which isn't really applicable here in Australia, but very much in the US, but was still in the Australian version of the release, and then like an NES manual. And I should say, you know, all of this, like the game was only in Japan, it was only in Japanese. It had remakes and re-releases that obviously been translated that are released here, including I think you have one, the DS version from memory.
Yeah, Shadow Dragon. Yeah. And a correction on my correction. So the back-to-back GBA releases in 2002, 2003. So the Binding Blade was on GBA, the first one GBA. The Blazing Blade, which is the 7th, that's the one that was released here as Fire Emblem.
So I was right then.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got this. I've got to put a marker down. This is a monumental time in history.
I'm happy to admit when I've got something correct, but it's it's because they were back to back at the same time, so that's why it was kind of confusing. They're both GBA games, so
it is actually like a really confusing series because since the first game that I got into was Three Houses, which is obviously the most recent game. And man, I love that game so much. So I started to really get my head around the series, and it is really confusing, like the re-releases and what the titles are, and they're very different in the West compared to Japan. So yeah, like this one's big because it's like the first time they've ever taken the original game and translated it, and they've added new things into the game as well, which is cool. There's it's like integrated chapter spots that you can kind of save it's like a save state essentially. And you can also speed up the game. So you can either speed up the AI or yourself or both. So like a lot of quality of life improvements, which is pretty cool.
That's really good because the rest of the features are kind of a given with anything they release on, your virtual console style things these days, especially with like the Nintendo Switch Online and the NES Online stuff. But the fast forwarding, that's something they've obviously built just for this, which is cool.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, whenever you're able to do that in a game, though, sometimes I think you don't properly appreciate as much of the flow of the battle if you fast forward the enemy's moves all the time. But, I mean, it's still helpful. I'm not going to say it's not helpful. So.
Well, like in Fire Emblem Three Houses, they have they have the same type of system there as well. And I think, like, it actually... Like, I started to skip the enemies' animations when it didn't make sense for me to watch them, if that makes sense. So like I didn't need to watch it to understand what they're doing. So I'm really glad that they've got that integrated in as well. So, I guess the question is, this was $90 Australian. Did you buy it from EB Games?
No.
Well, I don't know why that's such a funny question.
Well, I've got Shadow Dragon, so if I want to play through that storyline, I've got it. Obviously, it's a very different game in a lot of ways, but Shadow Dragon, I've played through Path of Radiance, which is amazing. I played through the 2 GBA ones that were released here, and I played through Shadow Dragon. Of those 4, Shadow Dragon's probably my least favorite, but that's also got to do with the art style. They kind of got this weird pre-rendered art style a lot of people didn't really like, and I'm kind of with them on that. But I honestly have absolutely no interest in purchasing a $90 special edition of a NES game. Really not. It's just not what I'm looking for, but it's huge for fans. I love it for fans, and it's great that they're doing it for the West as well. This easily could have just been a Japan-only special edition.
Yeah.
Or collector's edition. And no, they actually have done it here. So it's great.
Well, and we're lucky because we are theoretically under the European component of Nintendo, but we do sometimes get US releases when they don't get the release in Europe, which is just so odd the way it all works. Because it's not like as if Fire Emblem for me feels like a massive franchise in Australia. So it was really cool to get it. I was like, and we should say that the trailer that they had for it, like the Shadow Drop trailer,
it was so good. It was
freaking
really
amazing. Good. Like opens up, and it's really funny because in Australia, definitely in Australia, everyone's introduction to Marth was through Smash Brothers. And like I remember when I saw Marth, I was like, who the hell's Marth? Like I thought I knew a lot about Nintendo. And it played into that. It was really funny. Had like the CRT at the start, like that they're watching, and it's like kids kind of arguing about who the hell's Marth. It's just so well done. Like so well done. It's something that Nintendo does so well.
I'd always known about the Fire Emblem series just from like I used to get there's a magazine, I think it's called Superplay in the UK when I was living over there, and that was all about import games and stuff. So you had your Total Magazine, Games Master, and all that over there that were focused on, like just the games that everyone could get access to in Europe.
Yeah.
Then you had things like EGM, so that was these are all these are all the cool games that that are in the US but we can't get over here. And then you had Superplay, which was really really cool because they showcased all these Japanese games. And so I heard about Fire Emblem through that kind of stuff. But then when emulation became a thing, you're like, oh man, what finally this is what Fire Emblem is, and you play it and you're like, I have no idea what's going on. I can't read any of the the language, of course.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really, those games are very difficult to play via emulation until I imagine people have done English patches and fan patches for some of those.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for all of them.
Yeah, so it's until that happened, there was no real proper way to play it unless you knew Japanese or just persevered. So it's really really great. It's interesting. I don't know what the general reaction to this announcement was, because I imagine some people would have been like a little underwhelmed of like, oh, they're just re-releasing an NES game, as opposed to thinking something like new and flashy. But that's just, I hope that's not the case. I haven't sat there and looked at what the amount of dislikes were on the trailers and stuff like that. So I hope it's generally
overall, from what I saw, very positive. Like, it wasn't like one of those ones. Like, surprisingly, I guess, and I think maybe that's more the fan base. I do find the Smash fan base to be a bit bonkers around stuff.
It does, yeah. It does make me wonder though, like, when are they going to do Mother 3? I mean...
Yeah, we've never brought that up on the podcast, have we?
No.
So you want to give the background here for people that are like, what the hell's Mother 3?
Well, a lot of people will know the name Earthbound more so than Mother, but basically the third game in the series, Mother 3, because, had Mother, Mother 2, and I can't remember, I think they called it Earthbound. What do they call Mother when they release a virtual console here?
It's so like weird. Earthbound, so over there it was like Mother, Mother 1, Mother, Mother 2, Mother 3. And then here we got Earthbound, which is Mother 2, which is a Super Nintendo game. And then they did finally re-release because they had a translated version of Mother. And I don't recall what they were going to call it. But when they re-released it on like the Wii U eShop or something like that, they called it Earthbound Beginnings.
That's it, yeah. And Mother 3 is, by all accounts, a fantastic game. There's heaps of great fan translations out there ready for the, to playing it on GBA emulation. But it's a game out of every, I guess, unreleased Nintendo game in outside Japan, that's the one game that people have been clamoring for. And Nintendo have brought it up before in jokes and self-referential humor about it. I mean, it's an easy rainy day thing for them to be like, oh, here's the Mother 3 re-release, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's something they could pull out of their pocket at any time, really, once they put a little bit of work into it. And I just wonder if they're waiting for, if there's some kind of anniversary or something coming up for the series. That'd be.
I think there is, though. I think in like next year, it's 30 years or something like that, isn't it?
I have no idea. But yeah, that would be the perfect time to do it, just like they did with this. So...
yeah, look
forward to all those unhappy people when it's not announced in every single Nintendo Direct.
But they go to their own. What is it? They walk to the beat of their own drum. That's not right. I can't remember how that saying goes. Yeah, they march to the beat of their own drum, right? Nintendo. And for me, it's like they don't really care about what people think about that stuff. It's like, people don't like what we do, whatever. I don't think it really changes their plans. Whether people are like desperately clamoring for something or not. It's like the only challenge that they'll have with Mother 3 is, because I don't know if you played it at all. It's like there's so much text, dude. Like, and I know like it sounds like, oh yeah, whatever. It's literally like insane how much text that has. And there is an amazing translation of it. So if you go to starmen.net, it's like the definitive translation of that game. And it's the one that everyone uses for reproduction carts and all that kind of stuff. But, just listening to the team, it's like it literally took them like years to get through it. So I kind of wonder if it's a bit like they look at it and just go, geez, there's just like too much work to go into that game to translate it. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's a shame that they're not very open to just, essentially, giving money to those people for that
Yeah.
work.
Well, you look at Valve. That's what Valve would do. They go, well, hey, there's a
Hmm.
great translation here. I think there's a few things that they would censor that's in the translation. But I think like overall, yeah, that's what Valve would do, wouldn't they? Like that's what they've done with, the updates to Left 4 Dead and Black Mesa and all that kind of stuff. So that would be the most logical thing to do. Go, hey guys, great job. But they hate that shit, Nintendo,
Yeah, I
because
know.
they feel like it encourages it.
Going back to Earthbound for a second, I will admit that that's one of my shameful games that I've never played all the way through. Every time I've tried to play Earthbound, something's just always pushed me away about it, and I know it's a great game. It's not that I've disliked when I've played it. I just think that I just never been in a right moment to give it a good shot. So I hope to one day. I don't believe it's a super long game or anything. So
No, it's not. Yeah.
yeah.
And for me, the one on that vein is Undertale. It's like I played quite a bit of Undertale, and then I just gave it up. I don't know, it just didn't click with me. Like, I think it had way too high expectations in my mind because everyone's like, "Oh, this game's amazing," and I played. I'm like, "Yeah, it's all right."
Well, I think that game shows its hand. Like, I think maybe the full experience probably is where maybe that hype comes from. But the thing is, if you're not enjoying, and the things I say, there's someone who's never played it, just from by all accounts. But the thing with that game is, well, any game, like if you play it, you're not enjoying it, you don't have to keep playing it, and that's it.
Well,
that's it.
That's me with Lord of the Rings, the books. Like I just can't stand those books. Like I've read so many. I would have read it twice if I just kept going by now, because I've read up to halfway through Two Towers or something like that, and then I'd started again years later. I just
Can you believe I've read through Lord of the Rings twice, and I've even listened to the audio book version of it.
Oh god,
which was really interesting. And the audio book, actually, the guy who does the audio book, his voice is actually what inspired the Gollum voice for Andy Serkis. So it's really cool. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, but just getting back to Fire Emblem. So when I watched this trailer, I was like super into it. I was watching it going, shit, like I'm gonna buy this. And then, like when they were talking about the collector's edition, the thing that they let slip, they go, it's a digital game download. So there's no cart or anything. And I don't know why. And it made me think, like, why is this? But as soon as they said that, I just like totally turned off it. And then I was chatting to my wife about, should I get this? It's like so much money. It's ridiculous for what it is. It's such a cool piece though, And there's like an art book in it. I love going through those art books. Like I really do love going through those art books. But then ultimately, just this digital download, it just pissed me off. And I was like, nah, forget about it. I'm not going to get it. It's just going to annoy me that it's a digital download.
It's interesting to see the reaction across the internet that the entire focus of this is on that limited digital release until the 31st of March.
Yeah.
And you know what? For a game like this, it doesn't bother me at all.
It doesn't bother me at all. We're very contra to what everyone thinks about these limited releases.
I understand why people don't like it. I think getting pissed off about it is unreasonable. But I understand why people don't like the idea, because theoretically there's no real reason, technically, right? But we know it's FOMO. We know the reason why they're doing it. It's marketing. It's basically a way to drum up and get the sales and kind of, create a bit of a buzz about it. Yeah. But to get pissed off about it, I mean, this is a game that you could have played at any point by downloading like an emulator, if you really wanted to.
Well,
and you're still going to be able to do that.
The best version of this game, according to like heaps, like, really deep Fire Emblem fans, is the SNES version. So the SNES, they remade this game, and it's got SNES graphics, and I know there's translations of that game. So if you really want to play it, that's the best way to play it. And, there's obviously the release version, which is what you've got on the Nintendo DS. So there's like plenty of ways to play it. Nintendo DS, by the way, you can play that on the 3DS. the stack's way to play. What I don't understand about this whole argument is either if you're into the game, you're gonna buy it. And I hear that people go, and I'm very privileged. I got to be clear about that. Like, I didn't grow up with a lot of money, but like I'm very privileged now, and I'm very lucky. But I still feel like, geez, like it's a $9 Australian digital release. Like, if you really want to play this game, you can buy it. You don't have a Switch if you can't afford $9 for a game. And
I think I saw a
the
comment
argument that
somewhere
people have around, hey, it's limited. Like, what if, they're trying to save up for it? I'm just like, that's just BS. That's BS. And then at that point, it's just marketing. Like, when are people getting angry at Xbox for creating a Xbox Series X fridge that they've started to give away to influencers? That's just marketing. They didn't need to do that. Like, I struggle to get it.
That argument held a lot more weight when you're talking about an $80 game like Mario All Stars. A $10 game is a very different ballpark. But also, I've also heard an argument here and there that, maybe what if you want this game, but you don't have a Switch yet, and but you'd like it, and it's like, well, technically, it's not a great way to do it, but technically, you can probably sign up to Nintendo account and purchase it off their website, so you've got that on your account.
I don't think you can. No, you need a Switch to be able to create the account. From my recollection, you can't do that online.
Oh, really? Okay.
But I mean, you can borrow someone's Switch. It's a bit convoluted, but...
Oh, yeah, at that point, why bother? But, yeah.
But again, it's like... I know this... I'm going to sound like an arsehole. This is the whole show of, like, am I the arsehole? Am I the a-hole? But seriously, it's like, in life, there's plenty of things I've missed out on. Plenty of things. But that's life. You can't experience everything in life. And sometimes things suck, right? And I've had that when I was growing up. But... it steals you.
To me, that's the episode title. Sometimes things suck.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, you can't have everything. I feel like people are so entitled to, like, I want everything, It's like, that's part of life. Sometimes you miss out on things. I've missed out on a bunch of Nintendo stuff that I'd love to have, Yeah.
In everyone's defense, I think it just stings a bit more because it's the digital part.
But who cares?
Some people do, clearly.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, in the future, everything's going to be digital anyway, you'd presume. Like, I'd be pretty surprised if we're still talking about carts in 10 years' time.
Well, I think this whole collector's thing is still something that'll happen, but as you said, it's just going to be digital code in a box anyway, so...
Well, and I keep going back to my thing of, I feel like at this point, just don't even have a code. Just release the thing without the code.
But then, I mean, in this is not so much this situation, but there's times when there might just be something else that's like not as expensive, but you actually want to purchase as a present for someone. Then then you don't have to go through the extra step of getting them to purchase it and giving them the money for it. Because I still don't think you can gift stuff on Nintendo either, can you?
No, and that sucks.
So in that situation, you could gift someone the game at the same time, but then that also assumes you have access to a Switch, and not everyone would be in that situation. So I think from a gift and retail standpoint, the code in the box makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you could always have the codes there separate as well, but yeah, I get what you're saying. That gift thing's so annoying. Like, my wife's brother, I wanted to get him the Smash DLC, the first Challenger pack, for his birthday or Christmas or something like that. And like, I was like, okay, how do I send this to him? Because I've sent him stuff on Steam before, and I'm like, oh, I can't. Like, there's no way to do it. So I had to go, hey, can you bring your Switch over? And then I just like dodgily went, hey, I need to do something with the Switch to connect it to our Wi-Fi. And he's like, okay, yeah, cool, whatever. And then I bought it on his thing.
I don't know about PlayStation, but I know Xbox only introduced that this gen, or current gen, whereas it wasn't available on 360 and stuff. So
I think they're introducing it on PlayStation, but it's been an issue on PlayStation as well.
Yeah.
And it just seems weird to me because it's such a no-brainer, right? Like, people like our crazy friend Mike, who's been on the podcast, he's the kind of guy that if he's been really into a game, he'll buy it for you. He's done that to me before.
He's done it for me as well. He's an awesome guy.
He's like, I love this game. And I'll go, dude, I'm not interested in getting it. And he goes, I'll just buy it for you.
let me explain. I hope he does hear this as well.
He's not going to hear it. He doesn't listen to anything apart from his own stuff.
That once I was I think I was off work, as in like I wasn't working, so I wasn't looking to spend much money at all. And Left 4 Dead just came out, and he was so psyched about this game. He wanted to get everyone to play it, and and he bought the game for me. But rather than just be okay, here's the game, and he surprised me with it. He actually went to the effort of getting a box and then buying a Barbie doll. I don't know if it was technically a Barbie or like a cheap knockoff, but it was a Barbie in a sense.
Yeah.
Painted it green, put like red markers over, basically made a zombie Barbie, put it on top of the box and put like all this like paper underneath it. Like, it looks awesome. And then underneath the zombie Barbie in the box was the game. And he gave that to me. And he said, and I don't know if this is true or not, he said that he was sitting there at work doing this. And people are like, what are you doing? He's sitting there like cutting up a Barbie and painting a Barbie. Oh, man.
He's like an extremely creative, bizarro guy.
That's amazing. It's amazing.
He's a really funny guy. Very, very funny guy. That's awesome. He's got a lot of crazy ideas that are funny. The amount of competitions he's entered and won, like if it's based on creativity, it's like insane.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So in terms of this, I ended up not getting it. I really wanted it. I'm like so disappointed that it didn't have a cart. I get that it probably would have added another $10 to it, but honestly, if they said it was like $100 and it had the cart in it, I probably would have bought it. But alas, it's not the case. I'm going to be like bummed out when I see people having it, but I think
but then you also would have been annoyed because then you have to swap the cart back and forth, and then you would have been like, I'm just going to buy it digitally anyway.
No, I told you my theory about that. That like single player games, I always prefer to buy the cart, but it's the online games that you need to jump in and out of.
Fair call.
And probably Animal Crossing is the one exception there as well. That I feel like you should have that digitally rather than the cart version. So yeah, alas, but it's such a cool thing that they did. I'm so glad that they did it, and I kind of hope that there's some more announcements along Fire Emblem, but I doubt it. I think this is a pretty big one, and we probably won't hear any more about Fire Emblem until they announce the next game, really. All right, well, let's get into, a very hot platform that everyone's talking about. So Stadia. Pac-Man. Pac-Man is coming back from 1980s.
He's back?
He's back. Guess who's back? Pac-Man's back. And getting what do you call it? A Battle Royale? No way. I couldn't imagine. So a 64-player version of Pac-Man called Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle is coming out. And everyone's excited about it because it's coming out on Stadia. So this is going out on
Stadia. They haven't said anything else, but they've been clear to say first on Stadia because we know that it's going to be coming to other platforms. Probably
what
not
I love about it
after.
is I feel like we're burying the whole lead of it. Like, so it's coming out on November 17th. I feel like this is like this weird thing where it's like, hey, cool, Pac-Man is on Stadia. This is a way for them to test the game because they can follow the one single game that will be going on Pac-Man. Like this, how the hell would there be more than one single game going on? How many people would be on Stadia at any moment in time?
I know. And the thing is, they're like, okay, it's a limited time demo. It's available in probably just one more day after the time this goes up. But it's like, okay, click here to play it, and you play it in your browser. It's like, nah, can't because it's not available in our region. It's like, it'd be nice just to be able to just try it, But honestly, this trailer was really cool. This game actually looks way more fun to me than Mario 35 or Tetris 99. And I know I'm alone on Tetris 99 front, but to me, this actually looks like a really cool implementation of it.
Yeah, and I've always said that I think that this is the way to do this stuff. Like take these kind of titles and blow them out into this kind of stuff. It's just, I don't know, Stadia doesn't make sense to me in the sense that Xbox, you can get away with saying, hey, we're progressively rolling out xCloud across the world because xCloud's not the main game, right? But with Stadia, like you're introducing something in a global environment. So people talk about this Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle. Great, I'm going to click on it. Oh, no, I can't use it because Stadia is not available in my region. And to be honest, when that stuff happens, I just go, I'm just over Stadia. I'm a Stadia. I just don't even give a shit about it.
Well, it's also $20 US. So it's not like
it's crazy.
So the barrier to entry is super high. Not only is it a Stadia game, not only is it a Stadia multiplayer game, but it's a pretty substantially priced game for what you'd think. Now, I'm not saying this should have been a free game, but $20 US, which is like $30, $35 here, or whatever it is.
It's about $30 here, yeah.
That's pretty pricey for something that you don't know if you're actually going to like.
It's insane. It's insane.
And the fact they've given a demo is at least good, but I mean, to me, this makes sense to be like, free to play with stuff that that you can purchase and cosmetics and stuff. Would be the perfect game to do that model. And you need a player base for this game. This isn't like a game where,
correct.
If there's players or not players, it's okay. I can still play it and still have fun. It's just maybe not as populated online as I want. You need those people. But about the actual game itself, so you can invade other players' areas, it seems, and have to defend yourself. It just looks really cool, like the way they've connected all the maps. It's like one giant, maze, but then all connected in the different exits and stuff. And there's a few different modes. Apparently, the spectators can impact the game for the remaining players with power-ups. I wonder how that is. I hope it's closer to something like Bomberman as opposed to something like Mario 35. But I'm sure it's closer to Mario 35. But yeah, it's such a cool idea. The trailers are really, really good. This could, I think, be a big hit if it was on anything else. And things like Stadia does need to try things, right? If they want to save the platform from the current death path. But seems like I don't know if this game is going to move the needle in any way until it hits another platform.
Yeah, look, you know how maybe too much, but I love the business side of gaming, and this just doesn't make any sense to me, what they're doing here. Like, I should be able to see YouTube clips and, like, hey, it gets me to jump into Stadia. Like, the way that they've organized it makes no sense. You know what I mean? It's just like, there's so many barriers to join Stadia. And I think, like, if you're going to launch something like that, surely you just launch it worldwide. Like, get it ready in beta and then launch it worldwide. Like, they're burning so much marketing capital on these releases, and there's so many regions that you can't get it, that you just turned off on it. And it just creates the negative buzz around it.
What was that? So Super Bomberman R Online was the Stadia one, and was that was that also kind of that was a Battle Royale as well? And
yeah, exactly the same. 64 player.
Have we heard anything about that game?
Nothing.
It's
out, and people actually said it's really good.
I'm sure it is.
Like, it's just like there's so many barriers of entry. It just doesn't make sense, Like, for me, I think the way that Nintendo done it, and other platforms, like, if you actually think about it, every single platform has structured up something where it's like, you pay me some nominal amount, $5 a month or whatever, and I'll give you some free stuff to get you in. And they've often gone down the route of these multiplayer games because they're very, like, have a high engagement loop, right? So with Nintendo, you've got Mario 35, that's going to go away, but Tetris 99 is still there, and it seems like almost a permanent feature now. You've had stuff like Fall Guys on PS4, Xbox, obviously with Game Pass, there's so many things coming and going in that space. For me, it's like, from a business sense, it makes no sense. Like, do the deal with whoever you need to, but get, like, the Pac-Man Mega Tunnel and Super Bomberman R as a, hey, you're paying $5 for your subscription to Stadia. They just come with it. You know what I mean? And then it's like, you kind of go, maybe like I'll like fire that up and play that a bit. That sounds kind of fun. Get a free 1 month trial or something like that. But
do we 100% know that's not the case? Because I know they've said it's priced. Because
like, the stupid thing about Stadia, it's like free, or it's going to be free, and then you have to buy the games extra.
No. So
or have
there's also
the pro membership. So you're also paying for that, and then still buying games.
No, but there is a library of games that you do get access to. It's a small library, but that's why I'm wondering, do we 100% know that it is not in that library?
Bomberman online in that library?
Or
is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's more like we know that it's priced, but I just don't know 100% if it's in there. But honestly, I don't even really care. But I'm just like, I've heard that there is, like, as part
Okay,
of that
I think
pro
it is.
membership.
I think it is. I think it is in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is because I just checked Stadia Pro. Now, if you sign up, do you still get it? And no joke, I just jumped on the Stadia website, so just like stadia.google.com, and there's like broken images on this site. Like, how's that possible? How is it possible? And also, I know I'm being like an asshole in this episode, but the height of the images is not even. How do they stuff these kind of things up? Like, to me, this just doesn't look like people who care about a platform. Like, literally, dude, they've got the height of these images, and there's some of them are different. Some of them are taller than others.
But
like, how does that happen?
But Google has a history of supporting all their projects, and never
Very
killing
well.
anything off.
Yeah, exactly.
And never killing anything off. What?
So yeah, you're right. This probably sounds like it will go back in part of the subscription, but the subscription's not like of the level of, the other comparable ones. It's like $9.99 a month US for Stadia Pro. Like, that's a lot of money, man.
This whole Stadia thing, so
it's
such a shame because there's a lot when they first and I don't know what they haven't implemented yet out of their original feature sets they talked about, but I do remember when they first announced it, there was some cool stuff, and you're like, hey, they're approaching this in a way that, initially it's like, it didn't not make sense, if that makes, it didn't, I didn't go, this is stupid. I go, this is interesting. There's some stuff I like, some stuff I'm not sure about. But then just they've made so many questionable decisions. And the fact that they launched out of the gate, I guess like almost like a beta period with less than probably half the features that they said was going to be with it. Just, I think, killed everyone's interest in everything. And the fact that, it's not available in the majority of the world probably at this point.
And I think that is such a foolish way to do it in the modern era. I think you could get away with that even 5 years ago, but I don't think you can now because the whole regions thing, people don't really care anymore. They just kind of assume everything's available worldwide. In the Western world, I should probably point out. Like, I don't think people are assuming it's going to be available in Africa. But in the Western world, if you have like a decent internet infrastructure, which, questionable for Australia, but, you shouldn't just go, I have to check a list to see if it's available here. If this is your main offering. And ultimately, what I don't understand about Stadia is Google kind of built everything that they do around being free. Gmail, Google search. And yet, like, they released this platform and it's like, it's all about like, pay $10 US a month to get Stadia Pro and all this other kind of stuff. It just, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me in a way, like the way that they've built it. Like, you think you'd build it more around advertising or, other methods of trying to monetize it, which is what they've always done. So, look, I think, we'll be calling last drinks on Stadia next year. I just can't see them holding this platform up. Like, Google are more than happy to kill things. And it's a shame in the sense that I actually think where this makes way more sense is if they did a deal with like Nintendo. And, basically had like Nintendo Stadia.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about Pac-Man and Nintendo.
Oh, no. I'm talking about Stadia as a platform. I think like from a technology point of view, it's like exactly what Nintendo can't do, all that space. So to me, there's like a really interesting marriage there. Like, if you could get Stadia native on the Switch and then have, for AAA games playing on the Switch, like that's super smart to me. Like, super, super, super smart. But yeah, Stadia by itself doesn't make any sense. But yeah, going back to Pac-Man, 100%. Imagine Pac-Man on the Switch, like, because it's kind of tapping into those retro players as well. So I think that's where it would be at. But yeah, do you think this will be success for Stadia?
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't think so. All right, let's get into some smaller news and more frustrated consumers. So this week, and it was as discovered by the Australian outlet, Survivor, and I got something to say about that. Hopefully not too controversial. But yeah, they discovered that there were unskippable ads inserted into NBA 2K21. Now, this has actually happened a few times even recently. We had this with EA's game UFC 4. And essentially, they tested, Survivor tested on PC, Xbox, PS4, and it's basically nothing to do with the load time. So, you could always make the argument, hey, the game's loading, they're showing you an ad. That's like the NBA, watching it on TV. What's the difference? But yeah, they were able to work out that, no, this is actually, just forcing you to watch this ad, and there's no seemingly way to skip it. Now, 2K have actually come out to say, hey, this was a mistake. And I'm just doing some air quotes here. This is a mistake. And they're going to roll it back. So there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to get into this, but does this surprise you, Swinny?
What a load of shit that statement from 2K is.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
It is the biggest load of crap. Like, that pisses me off way more than anything about these unskippable ads. It's just the absolute bold-faced lie about this. Nothing about this would have been a mistake. Like, that stuff doesn't get into a game.
It's impossible to have a mistake like this.
Exactly. It does not get into a game that level. And it kind of also pisses me off that they've used Galvanized by the Chemical Brothers in that ad for Oculus Quest 2, because I really like that song.
Oh,
but
okay.
it's, man, that statement just, honestly, like, I don't buy games from 2K anyway. That makes me never want to buy a game from that publisher, ever.
So,
like,
and this is what I wanted to get into, right? Like, this is becoming a huge thing in gaming where, they launched a game, and Crash Team Racing is probably the biggest example of this that I can think of, where they launched the game, they actually came out and pretty much said the game is as is, and the game didn't have microtransactions. It wasn't even like really necessarily geared for microtransactions the way it was built. And it got really rave reviews. And then 1 month after, they added microtransactions into Crash Team Racing, and it became like a core part of the game. And people were filthy about this, and rightly so, I think. But ultimately, and why I want to raise this is a couple of reasons. One is, I just feel like, personally what I do, and, maybe people feel like they can't do this, but I just don't buy these games. Like, I don't trust them. Man. And like, any sports game, unfortunately, I just don't buy them. As much as I would actually be the kind of person that would buy them, I don't. Because the FIFAs of the world, all that stuff, it's so overloaded in microtransactions that just takes so much away from the game.
Man, I wish we had Mikey to kind of, blast them about bloody loot boxes and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I challenge people to go back and play some of the games like that were released on like Xbox and PlayStation 2 when they didn't really have the infrastructure to do all these microtransactions. You go play those games, like, you earn the extra characters, you earn the, the outfits and the jerseys and the shoes and all this other kind of stuff. Like, and you go back and play those games and you enjoy them more, like it. And for me, like, I don't think there's much you can do about it, because people who are now like review bombing these games, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, they've already sold 80% of the inventory that they're going to sell anyway, because they do this kind of stuff after the fact. So you've kind of already missed the window. Yeah. So look, like, this is just going to keep happening in gaming. They're just going to keep pushing the envelope. And it's going to be even funnier when it comes to the PS5 and Series X, because it's going to have like super zippy load times. And then it's going to be like, well, wait a second. How does this make sense? How's it so slow?
Like, why? Look, I don't work in PR, right? I don't like having anything to do with PR, even though I'm kind of, in an associated field. I just making such that statement. I mean, it's not that you have to own up to it, but just say that there was something that that we've introduced to make, even saying something like to make it more like closer to the presentation in the sports show, because we know sports is full of ads, right? You could get away with a carefully worded thing like that, and people aren't going to call you out for lying. People aren't going to like it, and it doesn't change the fact that you've added something post-launch, but at least you haven't just lied about it. You haven't just bold-faced lied about it. Man, like...
But the thing is that there's the mega fans in these franchises, like FIFA, and I know NBA 2K, they have mega fans, right? And they need to lie like this in these kind of disclosures, because those mega fans go, no, they didn't mean to do it. You saw what they said. They didn't mean, it wasn't meant to be like that. And, it's just BS. Of course it's BS.
Those people are morons.
Maybe. And the other reason why I wanted to raise this was because the story was broke by an Australian outlet. So Survivor.com, which is an Australian video game website. And I've got to say this really carefully. So the guy who runs that, Steve Wright, he went crazy because there's a bigger Twitter player, I think it was like Okami 13, something like that, or Omni 13 maybe, who quote unquote broke the story. But what the person actually did was they took Survivor's story and video and they edited their video, cutting out the intro that said Survivor. So they've like manipulated it and then published it and going, look what 2K's done. This is total BS, right? So, they've basically stolen the story, yeah?
Yeah.
Because they haven't credited Survivor at all. And they've said this. And then all the websites like Eurogamer, IGN and everything started to quote the Omni 13 person who is bigger, like got more followers and everything like that, right? And this Steve Wright guy went crazy. Like you could follow the Twitter threads. He was like blasting this guy like insanely. This guy stole my story. Right? Anyway, the only reason why I kind of brought that up is because the thing is, back in the day when there's another Australian outlet, Press Start, they broke a story that Xbox or Microsoft have confirmed that they are not producing any more Xbox One X's. So they were the first ones in the world to confirm that with Microsoft, right?
Like I say, so back in the day, that was like within the last 12 months.
Yeah, I think it was like 5 months ago.
You say back in the day, it's like 10 years ago or something.
I'm just trying to be a bit lenient to Survivor. So, they did this. And then, outlets like, most of the outlets said, hey, look, Press Start, have broken the story. Survivor did not mention Press Start at all when they run that story. Like they spoke about it almost as if they found it out themselves. And I remember I was like so dirty about that because I'm like, dude, like this is an Australian, like we're a tiny little country. If you break a story, it's like, okay, give the credit. If we broke a story, right, I'm not going to go nuts about it, but if we found the story and then, I get it that, international players might just steal it, right? But if you're also an Australian and you're not like crediting people, I just think that's like really filthy, man.
The thing with this story though, it's not like everyone would have realized very quickly that it's playing the game. Yes. So it's not like some investigative journalism scoop or anything. Like everyone would be like, what is going on,
I think the biggest thing was the content stealing. It was that like he'd recorded, because he's actually, I know where you can see it. You can actually see Survivor, which is his Xbox handle. It's actually in the video at one point. You can see it. It's subtle, but so I think that's the part. Like if you're stealing someone's video and then kind of pushing it up and not crediting, I think that's wrong. And what we do with the podcast when we publish on YouTube, outside of trailers and things like that, I don't think you need to credit that. If someone's video, we'll put the source of where that video came from. I think that's the right thing to do. But yeah, I just thought it was funny. And supposedly, like, it was a tip-off from a reader anyway. So it wasn't even like they found it out. It's just someone tipped them off to it. And the last thing is, it just, like, makes me laugh because it's Oculus Quest 2, which, we haven't put that into one of our news articles, or news items, but now, like, if you delete your Facebook account, it deletes all your Oculus games.
I read this. That's rough. Now, I understand, it deletes you, like, achievement stuff because that stuff is tied to accounts. But, I guess, technically, if I delete my Xbox account, I've lost my digital library when I think about it. But the stuff installed on the machine would stay there, but I might not be able to play it. So,
but you know what the difference is, dude?
It might not be the same.
Microsoft and Xbox don't force you to put your real name, publicly out there and your information, like your date of birth and things like that, right? And stored on a system. But that's what Facebook does. You can't put a fake name into Facebook anymore. They actually ban your account if you do that. So that's a huge difference, man. Like, there's people who are very sensitive about their privacy for like lots of good reasons. You know, and if I jump on PS4 or whatever, I can create a profile, have nothing online really about who I am, and it's all private, right? Whereas you can't do that on Facebook. So I just think that kind of stuff is BS. There's also heaps of stories now of people buying the Oculus Quest 2. Then they linked it because they're brand new buyers, so they don't already have an Oculus account. So it means you have to have a Facebook account. So they linked it to a Facebook account, and then they've been banned on Facebook for whatever reason. So then they can't use the Oculus. And
Wait,
they've always...
so they got banned for some other reason. Can't they just create a new account on Oculus?
No. No, you have to have a Facebook account.
No, it's in... Oh, but because then they can't create another account because they're already banned. It says,
Yeah. And then they tried to refund it, like send the Oculus back, and it's been refused. It's just, look, you know, a good mate of mine actually just bought the Quest 2 and he loves it. Like, and a lot of people say it's really good, but I don't know why. I'm going to be really like such an a-hole about this, but I just can never buy the Oculus now with the whole Facebook thing. It's just, they're just going deeper and deeper on this stuff, and I just don't like Zuckerberg, and I don't trust that guy, and yeah, I just will never buy any Oculus, man. So VR is kind of off the table for me, I think, because unless PSVR 2 is any good, we'll see how that goes.
I don't trust Androids either. So
you don't trust what? Oh, Androids, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Out of anyone in human history, he's the most Android-looking person I've ever seen.
He said there is a mad clip of him saying, like, you know, back when I was human, and he goes, "Oh, I'm still a human." Literally, you can see it. He's talking to kids, and they're like bawling, like at laughter. Like, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was along the lines of, you know, when I was a human. Oh, well, you know, I am a human still. I was just like, oh my god, that's kind of scary. All right, well, let's get into you know, something that's not about ads or forcing things down your throat.
Well, hopefully not.
Like yeah, that's right. That's where the segue was. So this week we also had a very surprise Smash update. Now, you know, they've never actually done, from my recollection, so, you know, they've got like 1.0.0. They've always done updates like 1.1, 1.2, or like 2.1 if it's like a new character or like a huge change. This is the first time I've seen it where they've actually done patch 9.0.1. So as soon as we heard that, it was like, okay, it must be a lot of the glitches that are happening with Steve. And fundamentally it was. But do you want to cover the one correction? Like, I guess correction? Like, you could call it like that?
Yes.
Editorial?
So Steve, and I assume it's all of them, but let's just say Steve, because he can play as different skins, like Alex, Enderman, Zombie. But basically, Steve's victory animation has him eating like a piece of steak. That's straight out of Minecraft, the sound effects. But afterwards, he would then just like put his hand down, and the steak would still be there. And unfortunately,
which is exactly the way it works in Minecraft.
If you've got more in the stack, yeah. Like if you.
So all I'm saying is the animation isn't like Sakurai doing something different. Like it's literally almost copied. The game exactly.
It's very, very accurate, but unfortunately, because of the angle that Steve is on and the fact that it cuts it off around his midsection, the meat looked very phallic. Very, very phallic. And honestly, I never noticed it, but then also never really saw many Steve victory screens either.
Look at the humble brag there. I love the humble brag. Didn't really see many Steve victory animations. Normally Bile.
No, not really. And like, man, when you see the photos of this thing, it's bad. It's so bad. And I just love that whole story about Kotaku interviewing Phil Spencer.
Yeah.
And saying, "Oh, have you seen Steve's victory screen?" And showing him an image in like the Zoom chat or whatever they're doing it, and he's like, "Who did that?" As in, I think like assuming it was almost like a Photoshop, and he said, "No, it's a screen the game, and I would have loved to know the tone of this, if it was like he was laughing about it or not, but basically saying, I assume that will be fixed. And that interview actually happened in the week prior to the patch coming out, which was essentially this week. So I wonder. Obviously the internet itself kind of blew up a bit about it. Not blew up, but there was a bit of a thing about it. I wonder if Phil Spencer also seeing it just made that 100% certainty that got removed. So no longer.
I reckon it's like an 80% chance it was because of that.
So what happens now is Steve still eats the meat, apparently. I haven't seen it since the post-patch, but I think the video I've seen, and the meat just disappears. So they patched out Steve's meat. This is one of the best patch things ever. I love it. I know that I shared a screenshot to one of our friends, and it's like, oh, best patch ever. And he's like, oh, I don't get it. And then then it clicked with him. It's like, oh, okay.
But even with that, I don't think it's that bad. Like,
it's pretty bad. Like when you notice it, I think you don't see straight away.
I don't know. I never really thought it was a big deal. Like, I can see what everyone's saying, but I'm like, it's like meat. Like, come on, get your mind out of the gutter. But at the same time, it's Nintendo. Like, I obviously understand why they've removed it. And I do think it's like 80% chance it's Phil Spencer's reaction. He probably flicked a note to one of his lieutenants in charge of IP and managing that. Hey, get on this. This is not right.
This is like that, was it Lion King, the word sex in the clouds kind of thing. Just one of those unfortunate things that happens,
But you know what
is
that was,
that?
right?
Mario, it was like Mario Galaxy, isn't it? Like, you are Mr. Gay or something like that.
But Mario 64. So long, gay Bowser.
Yeah, but that "you are Mr. Gay" thing is just so freaky. Like, do you know what that was?
No, can I just address the Lion King thing first?
Okay.
Now, I might be wrong. So, the problem with the internet is it's so easy to check these things if you're wrong or right. My understanding of that before checking it is that it was actually meant to spell out SFX, like special effects. But the F looks like an E. That's my understanding.
Okay.
I'll check that. But what's the Galaxy one? I hadn't heard of that.
So, if you... basically, Mario Galaxy's logo has... let me just bring it up. So, it has, like, stars on it. Like little twinkling stars. Sorry, I'm just typing as I'm saying this. And every single star lines up with the letters that spell out "You are Mr. Gay."
What?
Yeah, I'm just finding an image of it. So I found something. Here we go.
Oh, and I've just checked on Snopes, which I do trust for fact checking. It was confirmed by one of the animators that they were trying to spell out SFX as a joke to the special effects team. But it is very unfortunate because if you look at it, I can totally see people seeing the SEX.
So I've just linked you a photo so you can see each letter that has that twinkle on it just happens to spell "You are Mr. Gay."
I've never seen this before. This is awesome.
Really?
This is so cool. That's so funny. It takes a special mind to be able to pick up on these things. And just saying with the patch, just going back to the patch quickly. So it's actually not fixed a lot of the problems, and there's like new problems it's introduced. This Steve character has caused so many glitches in the game. Like just watching all the pro players talk about it and finding more glitches. Like there's characters that now can't even jump up to platforms they used to be able to jump up to. It's like, it's really crazy what's happened to the game because of this character. Who, by the way, I love. I don't know why people hate this character. It's bizarre to me. It's like, you're kidding me. This is one of the best characters they've introduced.
I like the character, but I hate fighting against him. I don't know why. It's just something about the character just is so inherently trolly, even without the moves. It will like run away, it'll knock you away, and it'll start mining, and you're like, "Oh, you bastard!" You just like get pissed off at everything they do, and I don't know why. And it almost feels like you're playing against the CPU all the time, but you're not. You obviously you can, but like I'm not. I'm playing against actual people, and I'm like, I don't know why I hate fighting Steve so much. Anyway,
Yeah, so like I've been tempted to try to start learning how to play as Steve because
please
what I
don't.
do like about Steve is that it's so gimmicky. Like everything's such a gimmick. It's just so like trolly. Just like all the moves like, have got like some kind of weird troll element to them. Um, but it's just like to me, one thing about Steve, it's just so much work. You know, it's like very hard to get your head around everything you're meant to do. So, and the recovery is actually crazy. I don't know if they're going to patch it out, but using the mine carts and everything, you can recover from pretty much anywhere on like off stage. So, and just the last thing, you know, the whole Phil Spencer thing.
Yeah.
Swinny? Yeah, just saying that he's
I
actually been in
didn't
so
know that
many.
you were expecting a response on that.
Oh, I didn't know if you were there for a second. I thought it might have like died on your end. That he's been in so many interviews recently, and I really wanted to cover one interview with my favorite website, or one of my favorite websites, Stratechery. So they're, you know, obviously it's like a business thing, but this guy Ben, he covers strategy as it pertains to technology. So he takes a very business analysis view, but it's in tech. And he interviewed Phil Spencer this week. But the other reason why I don't think we should cover it is just because it's paywalled, the interview. But in that interview, Phil Spencer covered that they're talking about having like a dongle for xCloud, which I think is such a cool idea. Like you can imagine just like Xbox dongle or something. And, you know, for that to like just be out there and, you know, you could just plug it in and effectively be playing the AAA games. I think that'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah, and he also said that they may in the future look at potentially like another higher tier of Game Pass as well.
Yeah, Platinum.
Yeah, so
And I was close to getting Game Pass the other day, and then it put me off it. This whole Platinum thing.
A leaf could fall from a tree and would put you off Game Pass. Like that's how.
Ultimately, you know, like it's like the Fire Emblem thing. I like to have the game. I like to have quote unquote ownership of the game. So it just bothers me. I don't know. Just, you know, I was looking at it. I'm like, oh, Dead Cells on it. Okay, I really, really want to play Dead Cells. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, but then it could just go off it. It could be like, hey, next month Dead Cells is going. It's like, oh, now it's like I feel like I'm forced to play it. It's like, I don't like that.
Hey, you're the one that said, hey, limited time things are fine, you know?
True, but that's different. I can buy it in that period of time.
I know.
Well,
all I know is that there's a lot of games I would have bought otherwise that I've played on there. So,
and I think it's perfect for you. I think it's absolutely perfect for you. And getting into physical versions of games. So this week we found out Control, our Ultimate Edition, is dated, coming out, and we got more information about it. And we found out that there's a difference between the Xbox version and the PS4 version. Now, I actually love these. Like, you know, for me, this is just Game of the Year. Like, Game of the Year is my generic term for these things, which is it's got all the base stuff, it's got all the DLC, all the fixes, all the patches. It's on a disc, so it's like cool. I know I have that disc. I've got a bunch of them for like Xbox 360. It's like, that's the disc. That's got the best version of it. I don't need to download anything. I don't need to muck around, of course, because it's like, it's already out. Everything's already out. You just play it, right? And then they announced this week that for the Xbox version, and only the Xbox version, they couldn't fit everything onto the disc. So you actually have to download stuff, like, and have the disc. I'm like, so that's not the case for PS4, but I just look at it, I'm like, this makes no sense to me. Like, the whole point of these things, these discs are, you have it so then you can actually, it's like a token, like, hey, this is the definitive way to play this and I can jump on it at any time. To me, I just wanted to bring this up because everything around Control, it's like such a game that I want to play, but everything they've done is actually turned me off playing the game. Like, whether it's like, oh, you have to have the Ultimate Edition to be able to play it on the next gen, or just the way that they've like handled the whole game, it's just really stupid. Like, I actually feel bad for Remedy.
Yeah, I think this is a complete non-issue. The reason,
of course, you do.
The reason being, I know, and what you're saying is 100% like fine. I'm not disputing any of that. The reason I think it's a non-issue is that this is a specific version of this game, right? It's the Ultimate Edition, right? So not only is it just a specific version of the game, but it's also, not the most like, it's not a game that's selling like 15 million copies or anything, right? The other reason is that pretty much these days you have to connect at least once anyway to download the patch that you need, because all these games are broken at launch in some way.
Yeah, no, but this is not the launch game. I accept that now. That the launch game, it's gonna have patches. This is not the launch game, dude.
But every game pretty much these days will allow you and force you to download something, even if it's launch or not. It's hey, I've played
man.
this gen than you, and it's common, man. It is common. And
not for a Game of the Year edition.
like Forza,
that's not common, dude.
With Forza and the start of this gen, that happened. It happened with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. Like, there's heaps of games that don't give you everything.
For Game of the Year editions. For Game of the Year editions, they don't do it.
Yes, it's Dragon Age 2 did it on 360. So it didn't give you all the content, it gave you download codes for all the DLC in there. So same thing, you needed to have an internet connection for that. This is not a new thing. Now, it sucks, but it's not a new thing. That's why I think it's a non-issue, because I don't like it, but I think it's just people wanting to pick on this game more. Like, it sucks, but really, it's this, like, unfortunately, the thing I don't like is, and what I don't know about this is, have they made it very clear when you purchase retail or whatever that that's the case? And that needs to be up front and center. There needs to be a sticker on the box saying requires an internet connection, right? That is the thing to me, because if you've got people, let's say, that are in the military and stuff, that purchase games that don't have internet access, it screws them, those people in those situations, or live in in the countryside that don't have a constant internet connection and things. But we're this far into this now that I see it as non-issue, because it's just happened so much. It has just happened so much that I just
total BS.
The whole thing about the upgrade stuff, I think, is fair. Like, that was all bullcrap. This, I think, is just people wanting to just pick on this game more. I really do.
Well, I can tell you this, dude. You know who I am. Like, I'm not inclined to pick on anything. I don't have any interest in that. That's boring to me, right? And I'll give them credit. For the PS4 version, it doesn't say anything about internet. For the Xbox version, it says requires internet. And even on EB Games website, it actually has, you need to have the internet to be able to, basically get the full game. So, that's the right thing to do. That's a minimum. I'm not trying to pick on this game. Like, I've said this before on the podcast. Like, I'm super interested in playing this game. I just find the way they're managing everything around it, it's just so unnecessary. It's like they're lying. They're saying stuff like, oh, they can't upgrade people. It's just impossible. And then they accidentally upgraded everyone. So proving that they can do it. They just don't want to do it.
That part of it, that's what I'm saying. Like, that I'm separating that part of it. Like, it's this specific thing that I'm talking about.
Oh, but there's zero chance they can't get it onto the disc. Zero chance, man. Like, it's just they don't want to. They don't want to put the effort in to make it happen. And I think when you create a Game of the Year edition, the base level thing you're going into is thinking, it's got everything. Why do I need to update anything if it's the Game of the Year edition? Like, they're not updating this game. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's just lazy to me. It's completely lazy. And it really puts me off the game, which sucks, because I'm super looking forward to this game. And I feel bad for Remedy, because it seems like 505, who's the publisher, is like doing all of these things just in such a bizarre way. Like, I really don't get it. But yeah. Like, hopefully this is the last we hear about negative things about Control, because it's kind of like a weird game where it didn't sell well at all and was like such a critical darling. Yeah, it's just it's a funny journey this game's been on, to be honest.
Well, I'll just say that if people don't like this, they better get used to it, because it's only going to get worse with the game sizes increasing. Well, just in general, with game sizes ballooning. And I know they're talking about they've got better ways to do that stuff. It doesn't matter. Like, that stuff is going to become more commonplace than ever before next gen.
Yeah, so we're 100% on the same page as that. Like, there's an opportunity to make things smaller, but you've already seen it with Miles Morales. I had to pause there. And other games that they've been publishing the size of the games, and it's pretty comparable. And I don't feel like they've really, gone to that next level yet on what the games can do in the next gen. So I totally agree with you. I think game sizes are going to get even bigger. And, like if it's legit, like, hey, this game is like 150 gigabyte game, like we're never going to be able to fit it on the discs. Okay. But it's marginal. Like they can fit it on PS4, but they can't fit it on Xbox. It's just trash. Just anyway, I want to move past it because it really annoys me. Because it's unfortunate because I really want to play this game. But it's just all this crap around it. It's just annoying me. So, all right, let's get into a completely different topic and a much sunnier and brighter topic, and one that you will definitely take away.
Yeah, so a number of weeks ago, actually, we talked about that there's been some teasers for the next big update for Stardew Valley, the 1.5 update. So
Yeah.
just another small bit of news that it'll introduce split screen co-op, which is fantastic. I've never got a chance to try co-op in on the non-split screen version, but I think this is such a great move. And apparently the PC version will allow it up to 4. I'm not sure about the other platforms at the moment. Possibly maybe limited to 2, but there's been nothing official about that. It may just be some musings from outlets about that. But so Concerned Ape, the developer that works on it, great guy, has been he's teasing images. There's a cool video out there of him playing one of the songs from the game on guitar. Really talented dude, obviously. And he's actually apparently working on a couple of other projects at the same time, which it'd be interesting. I mean, I don't know how, like, I've never been involved in game development, but I can just imagine that it's such a huge undertaking, and to also be working on stuff simultaneously, and man, like, I don't know how he does it. It's just crazy to me. But going back to the split screen co-op, I think this is just absolutely going to be fantastic for couples, because the idea of, hey, you can sit there, in the lounge room, have you switch docked in and playing split screen co-op in Stardew is just really, really cool. It's the perfect kind of game for it. It's a game that you can easily modify the UI to make it work. I just think this is such a cool introduction. And I mean, I can't remember how old this game is at this point, but the fact that it's still supporting it, and these are free updates, these aren't paid updates, is just such a huge credit.
It was like 2016, and I mean, like, it's a very good contrast to everything we've been almost talking about in the whole episode of, like, stuff happening which is like kind of dodgy on the publisher side, or dodgy business practices, or at least business practices that a lot of people don't agree with. So this game came out like Feb 2016, so it's almost like 5 years now. And it doesn't make me laugh because the guy Eric Barone, like Concerned Ape, is his online handle. His whole story was in Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. Very, very good. And, like, if you're going to read one video game book, it's definitely that one. By Jason Schreier, the former Kotaku writer, now with Bloomberg. It's like really fascinating to hear how he developed this game. It was like 8 to 10 years or something, and he was like spending 10 hours every day, like, Monday through to Sunday, just like every single day working on it. And, it's awesome that it's a smash hit for him. He's literally a millionaire from this game. And the thing that made me laugh the most about it is, like, he released it, and then I think it was about 2017, he's kind of going like, look, I can't work on this game forever. I'm not going to update it much beyond like 2018 or something like that. And by the way, he actually had a bit of a run-in with 505 Games and got really annoyed with them, and then ended up publishing himself. So there you go. That's a bit of a tie-in to the last story. But it just makes me laugh that years ago he was sort of saying, what people can't expect, I'm going to keep updating this game forever. And he's kind of done that. Like, the amount of content people have gotten out of this game and the passion from the fan base, it's so cool. Like, I remember growing up playing Harvest Moon, and like, this is definitely the spiritual successor to Harvest Moon. And, now, like, he's on Twitter, he published, this is a while back, hey, in update 1.5, you can move your bed. And it gets like 60,000 hearts on Twitter. Like, it's the crazy passion that people have for this game, which is cool. Like, and I get how people are passionate about this game the way that people are passionate about Animal Crossing, right? And kind of in a weird way to me, maybe even makes more sense with this game, just given that it's got so many systems and so much to do. Yeah, it's really cool. And I do wonder if 1.5 is going to be the last major release. You'd think it would be, right?
Yeah, this is one of the few games that I just always think about, and I need to get back and play it again. And I think I might pick it up on Switch because I've only ever had it on Xbox, and it's like I think that's the perfect kind of platform for it. Especially if at some point we're able to leave our homes and transit might be a thing again, because that's a perfect transit game. And it's just, I haven't played it since those, let's say the first 3 months of being on Xbox, and so any updates that they've released since then would be just new and fresh to me. And it's one of the games that these days that, I could just see myself replaying for complete fun. That's not a multiplayer game,
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say about the Switch thing, because I'm debating about I've got it only on Switch, but I'm debating about getting it on PC. So, but yeah, and just on the commute thing, because, even though we're not in lockdown in Sydney, as opposed to where you are in Melbourne, you are still in lockdown even after today's announcement. I actually went into the office this week, and now we're pretty good with our work. Like, I can go in or not go in, and I've chosen not to, just to not risk it. But it is amazing, like getting on the train again. I brought the Switch. It does make me think. It's like, yeah, definitely. I stopped playing Fire Emblem because it was almost my commute game. Like, it was just so perfect for that length of time. Like, you get on, do a few battles, and that's it, and just chip away at it. Yeah, and it's funny how Switch is still like absolutely dominating it from a sales perspective. And I think one of its biggest features is kind of being eliminated in a lot of territories, which is just, being able to play it on the commute. But yeah,
thankfully it had Animal Crossing to make up for that.
It's true. Yeah, my wife's really back into that. She's time traveling, so she's going through every single day because you can manipulate the time. So she's catching up on every single day because she doesn't want to miss any single day.
How many days is she doing a day?
What does that mean?
As in, is she?
Oh, the pace that she's on.
Yeah, is she redoing multiple days a day? Or is she just...
Yeah, definitely. Okay. She's... it's like of the order, I think, of about, 4 to 5 days per day.
Sheesh.
Like, in-game days per actual day. That's the right way to say it.
Yeah.
So she's catching up to October, like where we're actually at. So, and that's a cool game, but it's almost like, it's so funny, just to go back to Stardew. It's like, he has a team now, but it's a very, very small team that's working on Stardew Valley, right? And I feel like their updates have so much more depth than Animal Crossing, and Animal Crossing has a full Nintendo team on it. Like, it is disappointing in that way, you have to say. Like, there's barely any mechanics in Animal Crossing, which is such a shame.
But yeah. That's Animal Crossing. Like, that's the reason why.
No, but dude, there's less mechanics than there kind of were previously in a weird way, in some ways.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But and the series has come a long way since the Animal Crossing on GameCube. But
you mean Nintendo 64?
Yes, Nintendo 64 first Animal Crossing.
Actually, in Japan,
it's Dobutsu no Mori. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly. That's right. It's not Animal Crossing. It's Animal Forest. You swine.
God. Anyway, I was just saying.
Sorry.
To me, that is Animal Crossing. It's a game that it's not about mechanics. It's about just doing random stuff. But anyway.
Yeah. Look, the last thing on that one is like, for me, you're right. It's not a mechanics. I shouldn't have even said mechanics. It's just things to do. It's like, I just wish there was some more things to do from a multiplayer perspective in that game. Yeah. Like, it feels to me like very, very, very vacant from that perspective. But yeah, this is really cool. Stardew, like, I get the sense that 1.5 will be the last one. I do wonder if they'll ever make a Stardew Valley 2. Maybe, 5 years time or something like that. Who knows? And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what he does next. He's got a huge following now. It's just, I think it's very hard for these people to follow up sometimes with these smash hits that they make. All right, well, why don't we get into my favorite segment of each week? The bargain bin. So the bargain bin for the week commencing 25th of October. As tradition dictates, we always start with the Epic Game Store because they always deliver some freebies. So this week, Costume Quest 2 and Layers of Fear 2 are both free. I think you were saying that Costume Quest is not too bad of a game, Swinny?
Yeah, well, Costume Quest 2 is just as good as Costume Quest 1. They're very similar games, but those games are really, really fun. I think it's Costume Quest 2 has an achievement where you have to play as a candy corn for the whole game, and all the candy corn can do in battle, because it's a turn-based like JRPG style game, is just like defend. So essentially you've just got like a character can't do anything for the whole game, and there's an achievement for it. It's actually really funny.
That is funny. And what I'm really excited about is next week, Blair Witch is going to be free, but then Ghostbusters, the video game remastered, is actually going to be free, which is kind of huge because I was almost going to buy this on the Switch. I saw it in store.
So I've actually
I didn't.
got a bit of a weird history with this game. So I have this game on 360, not the remastered, but
that's where it originally came out, yeah?
Yeah, and PS3, and I'm guessing PC as well. But what it was, so there was glitched achievements in the single player campaign, but they years later.
Why don't I not guess?
No, you don't know where this is going. But
yeah, go.
Years later, they patched it, but they basically said, okay, if you've ever started the game before and unlocked an achievement, you can never unlock those other ones. But anyone that started brand new can unlock them, right? So I was in a good position because I hadn't played the game. So unfortunate for those people in the past, though. But then they announced
bullshit. Like,
the servers. Oh no! Hey, there's a lot of bullshit stuff about developers not patching achievements. Let me just say that. But then they announced the multiplayer servers were getting shut down, and there's a lot of very difficult multiplayer achievements. So there was a mad scramble, and this is where I cared about more than RPGs. There's a mad scramble to try to complete all the online achievements. So there's heaps of boosting sessions coming up. I'm playing this game for hours a day, trying to finish all the multiplayer achievements, and so that I don't miss my chance. And it turns out the servers never got shut down. They're still up to this day, and we have no idea if that was someone misreporting, or if it was if they were just taking down one element that was like a leaderboard or something. But the servers never got shut down, so all of us are rushing around to do it, and I never ended up bothering to complete it because I said, "Oh, bugger that." And I just at that point, I think that's around the time when I probably gave up or doing all that stuff. But yeah, I played a lot of the multiplayer in that, and honestly, it's actually had a lot of potential. I actually think I played some with our mates as well, just for fun, and it seemed pretty cool. But I never got a chance to try the single player. So
yeah, I've heard good things about this game, and the thing is, I love Ghostbusters 1 and 2. I'm not going to comment about the more recent one that was released. But I think we both know, but for everyone's sake, Ghostbusters 3, they kept on trying to work on that forever, trying to get that off the ground. And so much of Ghostbusters 3 got incorporated into this game. So much so that Dan Aykroyd basically has said in interviews he considers the game to be the third movie, and it actually uses a lot of the original actors, their voices and things like that. So I don't know. I think it's pretty cool, man. I'm super keen to get this for free next week. That's just unreal. It's gonna be really cool, and it's obviously Halloween themed, so that's why it's these items are coming up for Halloween. Nintendo Switch. Do you want to go through some of your highlights?
Yeah, so as per usual, just went through, had a look at any games that I thought were cool games to that people might want to pick up. So first of all is Knights of Pen and Paper 1 and 2. I think they're technically the deluxe editions, and they're really cool games. I played through them before. Really, really neat, very funny. They're 50% off, and there's about 9 days left on those. Collection of Mana. So that's 50% off with about 7 days left. So that's the compilation that has was it Final Fantasy Adventure? I always get this wrong. Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, and Seiken Densetsu 3, which I think is now called Trials of Mana in the West. A game that I've heard a lot about that was started as a mobile game called Bury Me, My Love. very narrative-driven game, but apparently very good. That's 80% off with 9 days left. And Cat Quest, which is 85% off with 3 days left. Now, the reason I point that out is it's only like a couple of dollars. And I'm currently playing through Cat Quest 2 on Xbox One. That's actually a really neat game, the sequel. And the first one looks very similar. Like, it does not, when you look at it on the surface, you're like, what is this game? Is this something just like crappy knockoff mobile thing? It's actually really well made. It's really fun. It's it's not really a Diablo style game, but it's a similar kind of, action RPG kind of thing where you're walking around a map, going to dungeons and stuff. It's really, really neat. So, and it's very funny. Lots of pun names around cats and dogs and stuff. So.
Yeah. And I mean, for PlayStation, there's a lot of Halloween sales. There's nothing really that jumped out at me that was a new deal. But yeah, like you might want to check on your PlayStation just for the Halloween sales that are going on now. So obviously your Resident Evils, your Silent Hills, all those type of games are on sale at the moment. And then do you want to jump into Xbox? Because there's some exciting news of what's happening with Game Pass.
Yeah.
Why make me sign up?
Yeah, right. So 2 new additions to Game Pass. Go on. 2 new additions to the Game Pass. Hey, you'll bid $700 on an Amiibo, but not sign up to Game Pass. Oh,
I accidentally bid. But I guess you could always say that. Technically I bid $771. Well, I mean, it is true. So it's true.
So, new additions to Game Pass. Hey, I've spent like $150 on a hand puppet before, so I'm on the spec. Hey, I sold it for $100.
Sex puppets?
I sold it for $120, so I ended up making most of it back.
You're a scalper.
Yeah.
Go on.
So, new additions to Game Pass. There's 2 of them, both available now. The first one is Rainbow Six Siege. So that's available just on Xbox, not PC. I have no idea what it includes in terms of the operators or not, though. That's something that I wish I would have looked up before I thought of it right now. But at least the base game with whatever base operators that it gave you would be available. And also, Goner 2 is available now on Xbox and PC. I don't know much about that game, unfortunately. I believe it's a roguelite of some sort, but you don't know anything else, unfortunately. But 2 new additions this week, which is pretty good considering there was a huge amount over the last couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Yeah, and they've been teasing this Rainbow Six Siege coming to Xbox for a while. Like they had one where it was like a rainbow, like 6 rainbows, and it was like a castle that they were trying to, invade, so like a siege.
The internet will never figure that one out.
I know. Yeah, exactly. And they tag Ubisoft in it. Like I know you're getting sick of this Game Pass thing. It's like a meme now, but I actually saw this news. I'm like, damn, I really want to play and get into Rainbow Six Siege. I think I've said this many, many times, and I'm so cheap, I'm not willing to buy it.
But it's not on PC anyway. You'd need an Xbox.
Rainbow Six Siege, yes, it is.
No, the Game Pass.
Yeah, no, but that's where I was getting to. You've stolen my punchline. So I was like, this tips me over the edge. So I checked it, and I'm like, what? This is only available on Xbox and Android through xCloud. I was like, what? That's so weird. Like, why isn't it on PC? It's like Siege, so annoying.
Siege is probably not the kind of game you'd want to be launching through the Windows Store anyway. It feels like that's something that just probably wouldn't be a good idea. Because you got to think, all these Xbox Game Pass games, like they're the Windows Store versions, So Siege just feels like the kind of game that would be better from. I know nothing about Siege on PC. I'm assuming it's through their own launcher or something, or Uplay or whatever they call it these days, but I'm not sure. So
yeah. So I went from being excited and going, maybe I should get into Game Pass, to then going, damn it, because I don't know, like I'm such an elitist, like I cannot play these kind of games on console. It just feels wrong to me. Like the only style of game is maybe like a Gears of War, and I feel like that's been built from the ground up to be on controller.
And Halo, there's games where
Halo, maybe a little bit.
Halo,
yeah. But outside of that, I really struggle. Like playing like Modern Warfare and all that kind of stuff on controller just feels wrong. So another great addition to Game Pass. It's very cool. All right, well, let's get into our special features. starting with your Swinpressions of the Solitaire Conspiracy.
Yeah, so this is something. So this game came out on 7th of October, so it's been a little bit, but I was going to actually give some Swinpressions, but unfortunately, it was that week when I was in hospital, so. And I just didn't have a chance to really catch up and play the game properly, in the last podcast. So I thought, no, I'm still going to give my impressions of the game because it's something that not only did I purchase, so this wasn't some free Game Pass game. This is on Steam. I purchased it, so I wanted to get my money's worth. But also, I think it's a game that I really want to talk about because I have a love of the developers of past games. So, Solitaire Conspiracy is a narrative-driven spy adventure game, a spy card game that's based on Solitaire. It is not an exact version of Solitaire, but it's kind of based around the general concept of you have to stack the cards from ace to king for each suit. So that's when you talk about different versions of Solitaire, whether it's Klondike or Tri-Peaks or Spider Solitaire, they're all kind of based around the concept of having to stack the cards in the deck in that order. And this is certainly not the first narrative Solitaire game. There's a game that I've been wanting to give a try for ages called Regent Solitaire. There's also Solitarica, I think it's called. These are games that kind of take Solitaire and then just really expand on the concept. They're games that I've heard a lot about and need to give a shot. But this game, Solitaire Conspiracy, is developed by Bithell Games, headed up by Mike Bithell, who is quite renowned, actually. So came out on the scene with Thomas Was Alone, which is a fantastic, hilarious puzzle game. I don't know if you've ever heard of Thomas Was Alone, integot.
No, never.
If you see, I assume Thomas Was Alone is on Switch. If it's not, if it's cheap, pick it up. It's super funny. Puzzles are really great. You're controlling just different size colored blocks, but they all have different personalities, and the narrator kind of talks about it. And I can't remember. I think it might be who's the guy that makes The Office?
You mean Ricky Gervais, or do you mean
No,
the US one?
Stephen Merchant. I have a feeling.
Oh yeah.
Let me just double check this. For some reason, I think that Stephen Merchant was the. Oh no, it's not. Sorry, it's a guy called Danny Wallace, but he's very Stephen Merchant-esque, if that makes sense. No, but he's very similar in tone to.
Okay.
Like Steve Merchant voiced that character in Portal 2 that you carry around and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's awesome game. And then I also loved Subsurface Circular, which I did play on my Switch, which is kind of a text adventure detective game where you're a robot having to figure stuff out by chatting to other robots that come on a train that's constantly circling an underground network. Really, really cool. And so I was super excited to give this game a shot. He's also released some other games, sequel to Subsurface called Quarantine Circular, which was all about a pandemic. So that's interesting. Reading about that game made me feel a little uneasy. But yeah, so I was super pumped to try this because I love simple card games, like just things like Solitaire and stuff that you can just play single player, things to pass time. So I wanted to give this a shot, and I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. So I will say that up front that he calls this release part of his Bithell short series. So they're not meant to be long games. They're meant to be very short, stylized experiences. And I would honestly say, and not in a negative way, that it's more style over substance. It's more about, hey, here's a cool thing that looks flashy, but don't expect to be playing this game for 20 hours or whatever. So I beat the campaign last night. So there's 3 modes. So there's a campaign mode that is story-driven. There is a skirmish mode and a countdown mode. Countdown mode is kind of like it will just keep sending you waves of cards, and then you've got to beat them in a certain amount of time, and there's a global leaderboard, which is okay. Not my kind of thing. Skirmish is basically just an infinite game that you just keep playing. So campaign, though, so you essentially... It's narrative in the sense that there's lots of FMV cutscenes. So each time you level up, you have to get up to level 15. That's basically when you finish the game or the campaign. And there's cutscenes where it features the likes of... I don't know if you know Greg Miller from Kind of Funny.
Yeah.
So Greg Miller's I guess, the main person that's speaking to in those cut scenes. And there's also a comedian that I'm not familiar with called, I think it's Inel Tomlinson. I don't know how to pronounce that, but a British comedian. He's also one of the other people in as well. It's I don't know if it works. Greg Miller tries. I think that as it goes on, the material that he's got is a lot better, and he does better with it. But it definitely it feels like a pandemic game, like a game that was made in a pandemic. Hey, we can record these FMV sequences and just send them to you. You know,
I
it
get ya.
definitely
Yeah,
feels
yeah.
like, oh, no one can do anything. We can't set up a studio to do this. Let's just get someone to record something in their home and they'll send it to us.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I mean, there's some development there, but honestly, I was expecting the story to be really cool. And they've got these bit of text before each. You can choose which mission you want to do. And I'll explain the mechanics in a moment. I just kind of want to get this narrative stuff out of the way. And none of it really hit home for me. I just kind of just skipped a lot of the text because it didn't hook me in any way. But it does get better, and the storyline kind of concludes in kind of an interesting way. But in terms of the actual game itself, which is what you're going to be doing most of the time, so you've basically got piles of cards on the side of a column of where you need to put the suits, and there's what they call crews. So there's 8 different crews that, with the face cards of each crew, and the game will have a mixture of crews. It might be 2 crews, 3 crews, which is basically the suits of cards. Their face cards will have abilities. Then this is where it's completely different from anything to do with solitaire. For instance, if I put the ace card in the center, then that powers up all the face cards of that suit. So those face cards, if I put them on another pile, it might shuffle the pile. It might bring the highest to the top or the lowest to the top. So some of these powers are negative, so you don't actually want to trigger them. Some of them might explode the pile and then scatter them randomly. One of them is pretty cool. So if you place the face card on, let's say, a 3, all other 3s that are not sorted into the piles already will surface to the top. So you can use a way to kind of, you get all the suits in the middle up to 2, and then you find a 3, you put that special card on it, and all the 3s will come and you can put them all in. And honestly, at the start, I kind of wasn't understanding a lot of that. But it's also, honestly, really easy. With solitaire different versions, there's ways you can get stuck. You can play a game that's impossible to complete because you haven't made the right choices or whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't know. You're not even able to be able to process that information.
Correct. I have no idea if this game is built in a way where that's possible or not. If it's possible to lose, because I didn't lose. I didn't get stuck in any way. It feels like
this is just going back to you being a god tier gamer,
no.
beating King K. Rool on the first go.
No, honestly, the game's really easy, and I guess that's where the countdown mode, like the campaign's probably more to learn about the mechanics, and the countdown's where maybe most people might spend their time. But it did feel like, I'm like, is this supposed to be hard? It just feels just really easy. I
love that line. Is this supposed to be hard?
No, because it felt like a game that could be actually really difficult if it was like designed that way, but it felt just like too simple. It was fun though, and I really wasn't sold at the start, but as I really got used to, okay, how am I actually planning out to use these special abilities rather than just them randomly happening because I haven't thought about it. It got a lot more fun, but I won't say that at the end of it that it was what I was expecting. I was almost expecting a more fleshed out storyline, or maybe you could actually equip what crews you want to use to tackle something. And you can do that in the skirmish mode, but it just, I guess at the end of it, it just felt a little flat for me. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to give those other titles that I mentioned, like Regent Solitaire, to give them a shot to see if that's kind of going to give me what I was expecting out of this. But overall, I think if it drops, $5 or below, I think it's worth a shot. I will say the presentation is fantastic. Each time you level up, you unlock a new kind of theme, which you can immediately equip, which is pretty cool. And it's got really great music. So from a presentation standpoint, as I said, style over substance, I think, with Bithell's games. I don't know what to rate this. I enjoyed it, but also it's probably not the standout that I was expecting based on the other games I've played. So,
And we might need to do this post show, but you know how we're starting to develop our own review scale, which is like a
what would you use
comparison.
For this? Solitaire games?
So wait, that's the thing. So just, for people who are tuning in for the first time, so we landed on this idea that, we have a spectrum that has like bad and then like an average game, and the average game divides games that are basically good or bad in a binary way, and then we have a game that's like quote unquote perfect. So we've already done it for 2D platformers, which is a natural thing, very easy to classify. I don't know what we'd classify this game. I was like looking at it going, is this the Bithell continuum? Is this like Bithell games? Is this Solitaire games? I don't know. Maybe we have to talk post-show about what we're going to do here.
Yeah, maybe there's times when...
conundrum.
Maybe there's times when this does not make sense.
Well, no, but you can always classify anything. So I almost feel like this might need to be on the random scale. Just like whatever. The other scale.
Yeah, I'd say if you like Bithell's other games, I think this is worth a try. But I can't remember the price. I wish I remember the price. All I know is I don't think it's worth it for the full price that I paid. It may have been like $20 or something Australian. I think if it goes on sale on Steam, or if it comes to other platforms, because I think it's only on Steam at the moment on PC, and it's cheap, then I'd say give it a shot. So, and I will also say that within the first like week and a bit, that he'd already released a new update that's like a new campaign plus mode, so the game may actually get more fleshed out over time as well. So yeah.
Okay, no, fair enough. Cool, sounds good. And then you wanted to cover I wanted you to cover partly as well your approach to 100% completion, given you are the number one Southern Hemisphere RPG player in the world. I thought,
it's a badge of honor. What can I say?
From a Hall of Famer.
I walk, I start a new job. What's your claim to fame? Number one in the Southern Hemisphere. Everyone's impressed by that, always.
Exactly. That gets the ladies.
Now, I guess the idea of this is, so talked about last week how I was super pumped that Tales of Vesperia was added to Game Pass, including Game Pass for PC. And that meant that it was on the Windows Store, but also they added an achievement list to it. And Tales of Vesperia, for anyone that's played it and anyone that knows anything about how much is in that game, it is a very complicated completion from an achievement standpoint and trophies as well. And there's a lot involved, as you have to collect every single item, you have to defeat every single monster. Sorry, actively scan every single monster. There's so many missable quests. Basically, you need spreadsheets, or you need huge trackers for this. And so I guess it was a good kind of chance to actually talk about how I actually approach completing a game. And this is gonna be very RPG focused, but there's gonna be times when it does apply to other genres as well. I will say that it's mainly focused on single player games. Multiplayer is a whole different world. I will mention some stuff at the end though, but Tales of Vesperia is an example. Very fortunate that so this is the 4th achievement release. So basically, this is the 4th list. So I've had the luxury of going through this 3 separate times, including early last year when they first released Definitive Edition. So I already had all this stuff ready. I
just like the framing that you had there. I'm fortunate that I've already beaten this game completely 3 times.
Well, I'm fortunate in terms of the context of what we're talking about, in terms of having all the information available in a way that I know works for me. So, but for everyone's different when they approach a game. So if you get a new game and if you actually want to get all the trophies or achievements in it, the first thing you need to do is figure out, okay, what do I care about this game? Do I care about experiencing this game completely blind and not getting spoiled and not getting your experience interrupted or impacted by having to track the achievements or having to know what the missables are? Because as someone that loves achievements, I still do that. there's games like Dark Souls and Deus Ex and Final Fantasy. When there's new games in those series, I don't care about the achievements. I turn the achievement notification off. So I will actually do a blind playthrough of that.
Oh, like that actually amazes me, man. Like I'm so shocked. Like I don't know if you did listen to the podcast, but I turn off those things always with games because I find it very jarring. But I'm actually shocked to hear that you actually do turn it off for some games.
For some games, it really depends if how much I am really looking forward to it. For instance, a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla that's coming out soon. I'm probably not going to turn it off for that because also it depends how long the game is. If I know this is going to be a game that's going to be 80 to 100 hours, that makes a huge difference if I'm going to play it blind or not. Dark Souls is not that long. Deus Ex is not that long. Final Fantasy generally, if you're just playing the main quest and stuff, is not going to be that long. So that makes a huge difference as well. And also, when you're looking at a game, do you actually mind doing multiple playthroughs? So if some games will need it anyway, but if you don't care about doing multiple playthroughs, then play it blind if you just want to play it for fun. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of the ways that you're kind of going to be looking at for these achievements and tracking how to roadmap them, you're going to get spoiled. You might get spoiled about small stuff, not so much in storyline stuff, but there's going to be a spoiler at some point, which is important, especially in RPGs where the storyline does matter. So the one thing I'd really flag at the start is when you're planning that approach is it's important to know if there's a new game plus or not. So a perfect example is The Witcher 3. So The Witcher 3, post-launch, they added New Game Plus. So I was fortunate that I played it after they introduced that, which meant that Witcher 3 I could play through completely blind and just play and not worry about anything. And any progress I'd made towards all that stuff, when it came time for me to care about the achievements, I could just start in the New Game Plus, which was great. But with New Game Plus, some stuff carries over and some stuff doesn't. So generally that stuff is not going to spoil anything for you. So what I'd do is figure out, okay, especially for RPGs, if it has a New Game Plus, what carries over, what doesn't. If there's things that don't carry over that you think is going to screw you and cost you another 50 hours of your life to play through, maybe just flag things that you just want to make sure you don't miss, in that regard. So the important part of this right at the beginning is to do your research. So, there's heaps of great resources out there. So you've got the obvious contenders. You've got your xboxachievements.com, PlayStation trophies.com. So the fantastic communities there have done what's called roadmaps. So that's why I use the term road mapping. It's okay planning out the best way to approach getting all the achievements or trophies in a game. And they've done that work for 97% of games. There's so many games coming out these days that there's some that are definitely not there yet. But the communities have... Yeah?
Yeah, I was just going to... Sorry to jump in. I was just going to ask, did they structure it? Because, I'm a complete noob when it comes to achievements. I'm not, into that completionist stuff. But did they have it structured so that you can have a spoiler-free version? Like, e.g., if you're going to play through it, just be conscious that you need to do 3 things here or else you can't unlock everything, or you know what I mean? Like, how some games are a bit weird like that?
Yeah, so they're pretty good with that. Like most achievement guides that kind of go through the achievements themselves won't actively spoil stuff, and they will usually flag spoilers in there. But what the roadmap does is, so using xboxachievements.com as an example, they will have a list, and it's generally standardized, of general amount of time to complete all the achievements, the amount of playthroughs required if there's difficulty specific ones, so that you have to make the decision, and that affects your playthroughs. How many, and this is the key one, how many missable, or if there's any missable achievements. Because when I say about blind playthroughs, if I see a game has 0 missable achievements, I will often just completely play that game and not care about it and clean up afterwards. Because the idea is, well, then I don't have to sit there constantly checking another screen with, oh, have I collected this thing? Have I done this thing in the right order? When is there a decision coming up that's going to impact me? And I can just play through and just worry about that stuff at the end. I don't have to kind of, I can just enjoy the game. But these roadmaps are fantastic, and they'll generally say, okay, if multiple, like using Vesperia as an example, that Vesperia requires 2.5 playthroughs. And I'd say requires, there may technically be possible in 1.5, but generally 2.5 is the way, because you have to play through the game, do everything, you have to speed run the game, and then you have to do a half a run where you get up to, it's like a third of the game. You have to beat one of the main story bosses under a certain level, so it's like a low level challenge. And these roadmaps actually say, okay, playthrough 1, this is what you should focus on. This is what you should focus on playthrough 2, and this is what you focus on in that thing. So, and they do that for every game. And you've got, depending on the community member that's put in the time to do it, it may be a great roadmap, it may be, not that great, but it doesn't matter. Like they've still done the time and helped out the community by giving that information. Because otherwise you wouldn't know any of this. You'd have to figure it out yourself. And then it could force you, especially in these long games, if you really want to complete the achievements, it could force you to have to replay multiple times. And, at that point, it really depends on your amount of dedication, whether or not you want to do that. So, important part, doing that research. They also, in addition to the roadmaps, they have individual achievement guides, and that's where true achievements and true trophies comes in. So they also have complete walkthroughs for a lot of games that then walk you through. These are going to be 100% spoilers because it's walking through the game by hand, basically, and then saying this is when you need to, these are focus on this achievement, this achievement, this achievement. I don't use walkthroughs with very few exceptions, but they also have a lot of great guides, and I've submitted guides on there as well. It's super easy. You can have multiple guides for the same achievement to get different opinions. The great thing about that as well with true trophies is no way as big as true achievements, but if there's a game on both platforms, on Xbox and PlayStation, it will list associated guides and achievements on the other platforms, so you can say, okay, well, on Xbox, no one's written a guide for this achievement, but I can see that the PS3 version on True Trophies they have, so I can click straight through to there. And generally, it's going to be the same thing. There's very few exceptions where a game will have different requirements on different platforms for an achievement. So that's basically, doing your research about, I'd say, most important, the missable achievements, because that's going to cause you to have to replay sections of a game or not. But as I said, generally, the more you look into this stuff, the more likely you're going to spoil yourself. So that's where, if you really care about that, play through it blind first, and then worry about this stuff in another playthrough. But what I will usually do is look for those missables first. If there's only a couple, I'll just grab the details of those and not worry about anything else. But in the case of Vesperia, I will actually have to plan it out. And that gets me into, I guess, a bit more focus on some certain things. So difficulty. So a lot of games will require you to play through on hard mode or, or whatever as well to unlock an achievement. So the first thing you need to know is if they stack or not. Generally, most games will. I think Gun is an example on Xbox 360 where it didn't stack. So technically, you would have had to play through that game 4 times, except there was an exploit where you could just beat the last boss and change difficulty and things. It was great. And I'll get into exploits and glitches soon as well. But in terms of difficulty, I usually like playing on the harder difficulty first. But for some people, it's easier to play through an easy, learn the mechanics, and then how to mainline the game. And then when it comes time to do the hard playthrough, you can just focus on what you need to, and you don't have to face the optional stuff, which can be tough, especially end game stuff on hard difficulties. But a good game will allow you to, once you've beaten the main quest, knock the difficulty down. So that's what Kingdoms of Amalur actually is. You have to beat that game on the second hardest difficulty. And then as soon as you beat the main campaign, you just drop it down to anything you want to just clean up everything else. So a good game will do that for you. So I mentioned missables. What I usually do, and this is where I guess my prepping starts, is once I know what's involved, I'll start a Word doc. And I will just chuck the stuff in there. So I'll chuck the missable achievements in there. For collectibles, collectibles are probably the biggest pain point for most people with achievements. If it's a linear game, you need to know, can you choose a chapter to go back to and collect those achievements afterwards? If not, you need to track that stuff. And that's painful. Tracking audio logs for BioShock and things like that. It's kind of annoying, but if you want to get all the achievements, that's the best way to do it. And the important part to know is, are those collectibles tracked within the game themselves? So a lot of games will do that. Some games won't, unfortunately. So because if they're tracked within the game themselves and they're not missable, then then doesn't matter. Like, it will tell you which ones you picked up, and then you can just fill in the gaps afterwards by looking at a guide. But otherwise, you have to I'll put those collectibles in a Word doc as well. And just like the missable achievements and that, as I go through, I'll mark them off. Like, it's common sense. Most people will do it this way. I just mark them off. Usually I'll highlight in yellow to say I've got it or whatever. And I guess for open world games, it's very different. So use Grand Theft Auto 4 as an example. Having to go around and I don't know how many pigeons, 200-300 pigeons, essentially a collectible. It's just in different form. There's no way, other than the amount when you kill a pigeon, and maybe in the stats, I'm not sure. There's no way to know which ones you've killed and which one you haven't across a whole massive open world. So generally what I will do is, again, assuming that this resource is out there, you go find a map that has those collectibles. I'll chuck that map in Photoshop. You could probably do it in Paint or any other kind of thing. And I'll just physically or literally mark it off as I go. It's common sense, but it's just the easiest approach. So I did that for Far Cry 2, had diamonds across the whole map. Crackdown's orbs are infamous. There's like hundreds and hundreds of them. I had an orb map. I literally crossed them off as I went. It just saves you the hassle, because if the game has no way of telling you which ones you picked up, then you're kind of screwed in these open world games. You're just going to be searching around forever. So
yeah, it's really funny to me, because this is like, normally I have nothing to add to these type of things, and it's interesting. But for me, I'm definitely not a completionist, but I do find that if there's a game that I really, really love, like I do want to get like 100% in it, and that was the case with Breath of the Wild, which had like one of the most ridiculous, collectibles. And by the way, like, so the Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild, and I remember with the pigeons, even in GTA 4, people were like, there's 200 pigeons across the whole map. How stupid is this? And then, like obviously with Breath of the Wild, they had 900. And just listening to the developers, they had 900 because they wanted it very achievable for people, because you trade the Korok seeds for like more inventory and all that kind of stuff. They wanted it so that it's realistic for most people to max that out. So they added in extra for that reason. But then crazy people like me who are like, I need to get everything in this game, it became like such a chore. So I kind of did pretty much what you're saying, but it was a little bit altered. I actually had it all loaded up on my iPad, and I would actually like cross it off on my iPad, physically on the iPad, to like get through it. And just methodically went through it all.
Your physical setup makes a huge difference to that. Like, I've actually done that as well. I've got a tablet to mark stuff off. Now I've got my TV next to my PC, so it's pretty easy with that. And if you've got a dual monitor set up and you're playing a game on PC, like I'm with Vesper at the moment, then that makes it easier as well. But yeah, definitely a tablet helps. Loading up. I put a lot of stuff on like Google Sheets these days so that I can access it from any of that stuff. That's really easy. But yeah, out of interest for that Korok seeds, did they have any way for you to track which ones you hadn't gotten?
That's what I'm trying to recall. Like, I think there is. I think if you zoom in, potentially, I feel like booting up the game to check. But I do remember like not being 100% sure if I had them all as I was getting closer and closer to like 900. So then I had to go through each region. I think it was more like the regions. You could figure out from a region if you've got everything or not.
Okay, that was
like a big driver of it.
That's at least some indication, unlike something like GTA 4, where it just, you have no idea which one is where or which one you've already gotten. Other than physically not seeing the pigeon. You get there and you don't see it, but
yeah, I do recall like one thing that was really frustrating with Breath of the Wild is that because I've got like 100% completion, because there's an actual stat in the game, but part of that is also just being to regions. Like, you've kind of like physically entered into the region and it has the little subtitle of what region it is. And there's no real good way to know that on some of those regions based on the map. And like at one point I had to just go back through all these different regions that a lot of people online say are a bit of a trouble. Like, it doesn't really trigger that well, just to make sure it unlocked that one. So yeah, that was really frustrating. I got a like small sneak into your world. I was like, oh my god, this is so frustrating.
And yeah, for people that play, there's people that specialize in open world games. Like they'd have really good methods of doing that stuff as well. Like as I said, like I've done that stuff in the past, but now generally I'll focus on RPGs, which have their own kind of challenges. But I generally don't have to deal with big open maps anymore as much, so I'm kind of happy with that. But I guess to get to some other things, so there's something, I don't know, there may be a technical term for it, but I call them pivot points. So basically there's a lot of games, especially narrative ones, will have achievements for going down a certain path in the game. So whether or not it leads to a certain ending that gives you an achievement, and generally there'll be like 5 different endings each with their own achievement. You got to understand what those pivot points are to know if a game allows you to make hard saves, because not all of them do. Like, for instance, Dark Souls has different endings, but you have to do multiple playthroughs unless you figure out a dodgy way to do it, because there's no way to save. So you've got to know when to make a strategic save just before those pivot points to then minimize the amount of extra playthrough you have to do.
That's pretty smart.
And there's times you can work around and be super dodgy. So there's a game called Pharaonic on Xbox One and probably other platforms as well, where that game you could not make hard saves. But what you could do is you could get the game to autosave, go offline, because autosave then syncs with the cloud, complete the last run of the game and get that achievement, that ending. And then to save your entire playthrough, what you do is you reload, you go back online, you delete your local save, you resync from the cloud, and then it resyncs that cloud save at that point. So there's ways that you can game the system a bit to then basically... It is, but I mean, it's in the absence of you being able to make a manual save, which most games do. This isn't you sitting there and hacking the game. You're just literally just manipulating a save that you'd already made. You've played through the game. It's not like you're not earning it. So there's examples where you're able to do that. Obviously, make sure that you're not breaking any terms of service when you do certain things. But that's just literally just reloading as a cloud save. But most games will allow you to make that hard save. And some games, it's kind of ridiculous. It's you'll just make save before the last boss. You beat the last boss and just make the choice, and you just have to beat the last boss a couple of times, But understanding those pivot points to save yourself another playthrough is really important. But those pivot points is what's going to spoil you half the time, because it's going to kind of tell you when those decisions are coming up and what they mean and what ending it leads to and stuff. And it's not going to go through the details, but it will spoil you. A couple of other things. So any game that has cumulative achievements, so you collect X amount of money, or you sell X amount of items, or you do this amount of things in combat, it's good to know that stuff ahead of time, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. I'd say knowing that you have to collect X amount of money, it's important to know, is it overall, or do you have to collect it all at one point? Because that makes a huge difference whether or not you're then going to go spend money in an RPG to buy stuff, or you're just going to keep saving money until you hit that point. That's important. With combat, most games, they will build achievements around using every aspect of a combat system, including things you wouldn't actually do it. So a lot of games, you'll find a nice comfy pocket where you'll just do the same thing in combat because it works. But then suddenly, parries are a good example. A lot of people don't parry in games, but they're usually in games. And it'll usually be an achievement for parrying 100 enemies. So knowing that stuff ahead of time will kind of means that you can kind of work on it throughout your playthrough, and you don't have to worry about it at the end. You don't have to be like, oh, god damn, I played through the whole game, I completed it, and now I've got to go around and find 100 enemies to parry. Knowing that stuff can help you just save that hassle. And that gets me to...
And just on that, just quickly, like, do you ever find that causes a bit of, like, spoilers for you? Where it's like, it says something in there, like a mechanic or whatever, that you didn't know was in the game. And then you're like, oh, okay. Didn't realize that that's in the game, but now I do know that.
Yeah, it would. I don't really care about spoilers for... I don't really care about spoilers for mechanics myself, but for anyone that does, yeah, it would, 100%, because it'd be like, use the whirlwind spell 50 times, and you're like, I didn't even know the spells in this game, So yeah, exactly. That's where, going back to the start, like those achievements generally aren't missable unless you reach to a certain point where there's not enough enemies to fight, which can happen. But generally, they're not missable. So if you care about that, just flag the ones you know are going to be missable, and just kind of keep track of those in a and try to get it from a source that's not spoiling it for you. And then don't care about anything else. Just worry about it at the end. It's just going to mean that you're going to have to grind stuff that you would have probably been able to work on. So it just saves you a little bit of time. But the trade-off is that there's a parry mechanic in the game. So
yeah, makes sense.
And this gets me to, I guess, the last part of what I want to talk about with this is the grind. And the grind is real. The grind is real. It's ominous. And some games, it's much more prominent than others. Let me just say that. So the grind is in everything, not just an RPG, but obviously the term comes from grinding levels and things, or farming for items or farming for gold, whatever. And unfortunately, in most games, there's always one or two achievements at least that are unreasonable that no one's going to get through regular play, which. Honestly, I'm so used to, and it's probably worse for RPGs and online multiplayer games the most. And at that point, to me, it's all about efficiency. So I take a very meta approach to things. Everyone's going to try to do things efficiently, I should say. Sorry, but that's where I'm like, I think at that point, the developers have introduced something that is unreasonable to get through natural play. You are free to take advantage of any exploits or glitches you can at that point. I think it's fair game because I think they've disrespected your time. So screw it. Whatever you can do, whatever you can do, and generally
disrespected your time.
Yeah,
awesome.
They haven't designed achievements in a way. It's not about do this tough thing. Like let's say if Mario Odyssey had achievements, get all the stars or do this. That's stuff that is kind of built into the natural play. That you just might have to go a little bit extra, not kill 10,000 enemies when through just beating the game, you've beaten 1,000. That happens. And you're like, oh, come on. No, nobody would have beaten 10,000 enemies naturally. It just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So at that point, it just makes sense. Like a lot of this stuff was already documented out there, especially for older games. Just research the best methods. Try to find... if there's AFK options, quite a few RPGs will have AFK.
AFK, for people who don't know what
is away from keyboard, so you don't have to be there. And usually that will involve rubber banding, so literally putting a rubber band on your controller so that you run around in a circle while there's random encounters and you're killing your enemies. And you can leave a plugged controller in, go to work, go to sleep, and come back, and hopefully it's done it. It's literally it saves. It's not. That's usually not the most efficient way, but it's the best for your time and your personal life. If you want to complete that. An example of that, Skater XL. We talked about. It's got that ridiculous achievement of
around the world,
circumference of the Earth. People have already figured out, the most efficient AFK methods for that. An example, Vesperia. Talking about that game a lot. That has an AFK one where it's like you unlock a title or an achievement. I think it's an actual achievement. There's titles in the game for flying X amount of miles in the air in your airship, right? So you can AFK that and just keep it will just keep flying and unlock it overnight. My favorite is Chronicles of Riddick on 360. So this was actually, we're talking about multiplayer. Multiplayer is the worst, and that's the last thing I was going to mention after this. So in Chronicles of Riddick, you had to get 10,000 kills online and 1,000 match wins online. 1,000. So I did a combination of what's called double boxing. So literally had two 360s and two copies of the game. No joke. No joke. So
you're mad.
So double boxed it. Had a dummy
Double
account,
boxing.
and your dummy account has to have lives. Unfortunately, I don't do this stuff anymore unless it's an RPG. But
so you've got two Xbox Live accounts.
Not anymore. I had you get month passes all the time, like a free month of Xbox Live Gold, and you just use that on it or something like that.
Interesting.
So basically, you'd set it up, and then you did a combination of that with AFK, where you'd set it up so I think I had a turbo controller that would blah blah blah. So when it comes to that, that's not new. Like, people know all those crazy methods, but thankfully, a lot of like that's doesn't really cross into the RPG sphere anymore. So I kind of don't avoid that stuff these days. But the big thing for grinds though is like you need to keep your mind occupied, and the best thing for that to me is listening to podcasts, especially if you actually have to actively do much. Like, you can watch TV, but sometimes you need to focus on the game or what you're doing, even if it's grinding.
Yeah.
Podcasts are just, they're my saving grace. Like, I remember Final Fantasy 3 on Windows Phone. That took literally about 100 hours grinding. And like, that's on a phone. You got to think, like, that's not even me sitting there comfortably with a controller. And that's when I actually discovered podcasts, really. Like, not discovered, but discovered how I liked them. And it's just great. It keeps your mind occupied, makes the time fly. And obviously, this is only for crazy people that care about doing this stuff, Most people are going to be more respectful of their own personal time and not do this. But
and life and everything.
yeah. And that gets me to the last part, which is multiplayer. So first of all, we know a lot of people know about boosting, when people will team up and they'll kill each other, do stuff, and they'll boost the game to get the achievements or level up or whatever. Just whatever you do, don't boost in games that still have an active community. That still, if it can't be done in a private match, don't do it. It's like, I remember playing Battlefield 3, people be sitting there boosting. It wrecks the game for everyone. But for games that have a dead community, it doesn't matter, like, at that point. And the best thing to do with that is jump on a site like True Achievements. They have a fantastic boosting session, whole thing. Like, it's a whole built-in. You can set up by the hour, you can set up your availability for every single day, and then get alerts when there's new sessions for the games that you're tracking. Like, if you care about it and you don't, there's no community to even get those achievements really online, you can't find matches, like, join a boosting session, finish them there. Just be warned that stuff is, it's a bit of a soul drain. That's the stuff that I'm really glad I don't really have to do anymore, because not have to, but as in I don't care about anymore, because there's not many of those achievements in RPG games. But overall, as I said at the start, just kind of flag. Those roadmaps are really cool. They give you the general rundown. Also, they usually explain how difficult it's going to be, which is important. Some games are really tough to complete. There's a game that's bugbear of mine, Star Ocean 4. I've put 300 hours in that game, still haven't completed it, and I don't think I'll ever go back.
Is that a remake of the SNES game?
No, it's just a sequel. So,
but it's called Star Ocean.
Star Ocean 4, I said.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed the 4.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that game is just like, there's part of it that killed me that literally just meant that I was playing for hours and they meant nothing, and I just, So there's times when even it breaks someone like me, So, but just, just if you care about an achievement, just kind of just look at those roadmaps, prep stuff out. As I said, like, track stuff. I track stuff in spreadsheets. Like, we talked about Vesperia. I did all the work last time I played through to track that all and give myself checklists. It just saves you hassle, but don't let it impact your experience of the game. Play blind if you need to. So,
yeah, and there's if you're super dedicated, you can always just go back and play through the game again anyway, right?
Oh, 100%. But I think for games like Deus Ex is a perfect example. If I would have tracked Deus Ex and known about all the achievements, there's achievements that say play through the game without being setting off an alarm, play through the game without being spotted, and that completely changes the way you play a game. You'd be save scumming all the time, as opposed to just playing it and meeting the natural level of challenge that the game is giving you. So there's times when it will massively impact your enjoyment of a game, or at least your experience of the game. So turn that stuff off, play through it, and then if you care about the achievements, just do it again.
And I think, like, I covered this with Mike when he was on the show, but I do think it can add to the game, and that's the biggest thing that I get annoyed about with the Switch and Nintendo. I do think it gives you cause to go back and play the game. Like, if you really love it, like, at a minimum, like, you're a different kettle of fish, because you're like, you've got a mission that you're on. Whereas I think for me, I'm much more casual with that stuff. But if Odyssey, Super Mario Odyssey or, Zelda kind of has it baked into a little degree, but, if they had stuff in there like defeat a Lionel with this type of weapon or whatever, it would make me go back and play that. And, especially sometimes you find those fun challenges that you just don't set yourself naturally in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So I've always been a big supporter in that way.
The perfect example is Little Rocket Man, Half-Life Episode 2. Carrying around that garden gnome from near the beginning of the episode all the way through. It was such a cool experience. And Orange Box is one of the best examples of how to make achievements in a game. And yeah, as you said, like there's games I've played through on hard difficulty that was a real challenge that otherwise I would have just breezed through and probably wouldn't have enjoyed as much. So there's times when it definitely does add to it. But as I mentioned about those grinds and stuff, there's times when you're like, why do this? Like, why?
Yeah, to me, it feels very disrespectful of people's time if it's just do X amount of this, and it's sort of like you're not learning something about the game. You're not, you know what I mean? And I'm the same as you, actually. Like, one of the games that I play so much of is Rocket League. I rarely play with the actual Rocket League sounds. So I, number one, take away all the non-game sounds, like the announcer and all that kind of stuff. But I'll often just play podcasts when I'm playing the game. And, I'm not playing it seriously as sometimes I do. And I find that to be awesome. For whatever reason, the part of my brain that works for podcasts is not the same as playing the game and the strategy and, that mindset that I have. And I can do those things at the same time. Like I can retain the information from the podcast and I can play like competitively. So yeah, as opposed to, I started recently trying to watch movies when I was playing Rocket League. And yeah, I must admit, I've watched these movies and I'm like, I can't even really remember all the movie or all the stuff that happened in it. So I sort of dumped that idea. But yeah, was there anything else you wanted to cover with the road mapping?
No, look, I think I went pretty deep into it. As I said, there's heaps of resources out there. And just a huge thanks to the community for the amount of work that they do. One person I just want to really give credit to is on xboxachievements.com is the Pants Party. So back, I said I've beaten Tales of Vesperia 3 times before. The first run through that game, I used their roadmap back then, and that was years and years ago, and they're still creating awesome roadmaps to this day. So I
love people who do that stuff.
Oh, it's crazy because not only do they put in the effort themselves to do that, but then they put the effort back to the community. So huge credit to the people that do this. They're obviously not doing it for any monetary gain. So yeah, just huge credit to everyone.
Yeah, I love that stuff. One of my favorite game journalists is Colin Moriarty. He does a really great podcast, Sacred Symbols, about PlayStation. And before he started working at IGN, he actually just spent all his time doing game guides on game FAQs. And like so much so that even he played a game recently and then searched for a guide for it. He found the guide and then he realized, actually, geez, this is the guide that he wrote like 15 years ago, which I just loved. And he had some criticism of it as well. I was like, this is crap the way they've done this or something. And he's like, wait a second, I wrote this. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. And I love people who give back to the community in that way. That's really awesome. All right, well, I think that wraps us up for this week's show. As always, feel free to reach out to us. Probably Twitter's the best place, Big Wig Pod, Big Week in Gaming Pod, which is what it means, not what the handle is. And, hit us up on the website as well, bigwigpod.com. Pretty much everything is Big Wig Pod. It was easy to secure. We're always keen to engage with the community and, people criticize us. It's fine. It's always like, a bit of an interesting thing for us as well. And, we always love the positive feedback as well. If you want to help out the podcast, obviously give it a 5-star review or a thumbs up or whatever podcast service you have, or just recommend it to friends or people online. It always helps us out. With that, I'll say bye-bye.
Arrivederci.